They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. This is the Remembrance Day edition of Veteran State of Mind. I'm Geraint Jones, and it is my honour today to bring you the voices of British service personnel from the Second World War, the Falklands, Northern Ireland, Iraq and Afghanistan. Today's episode is about remembering brothers and sisters, but also strangers to whom we owe so much. It's about remembering those who died, but also today is a time to remember why they died. Remembrance is a time to reflect and to be grateful. It is also a time to learn from the mistakes of the past so that they are not repeated in the future. We have a number of guests today. Some you will have heard on the podcast before and others are here for the first time. I'm very grateful to them all for giving up their time and for sharing what are often difficult memories. And I'm also very grateful for you guys for listening.
My name is Raymond Smith, and I started off, when I joined the ship at Ross Island and went straight to Iceland. I've never been to sea on a ship before, and from there we proceeded on Russian convoys, escorting Russian tankers partly to Russia, and then we'd pick up the returning empty ships and escort them back, and then more or less, I think as soon as we was sorted out, refueled and rearmed, we were back again doing that for quite a long spell. And then we were patrolling in the North Sea from there, and for quite a long time, hunting subs, but I think we had one or two near misses. We picked one was saying up, on the Echo saying that we'd got that we dropped loads and loads of depth charges, but nothing came up. But we were doing that for quite a long time, patrolling North Sea quite a few months, and then ran into the English Channel. We were doing patrols there, still hunting for U-boats and enemy shipping.
So this was all to keep Britain supplied because the U-boats were cutting off the supplies?
That's it, yes. It was, that was from 1943 when I joined the Navy, and then gradually, as D-Day were approaching, we were doing training with, various landing craft. We were doing that for quite some time, trying to get used to what we were doing, with the convoys getting ready to go to France. And I think it just happened one day we were out doing, called out there, and we were all grumbling, another damn training session, but then they told us that was the real thing this time. And then, from there on, we were escorting the landing craft and various ships to Sword Beach. And from there, we were spent, a long time bombarding the coast. And they were just continuous then, power up the noise and everything. In between all that, then we had to dash back to Portsmouth, refuel, rearm, and then back doing the same thing for quite a while, till the troops were well established. And then from there we were patrolling along the coast because the German E-boats, and that was still very active, so we got engaged with quite a few of those. Unfortunately, there we had one of our seamen killed on the, fighting against these E-boats.
So the E-boats, they're the torpedo boats, were they?
Well, they're similar to torpedo boats, and very fast and armed with locales, with either pom-poms or Orlican guns, and they were pretty active, and they were, they were a job. Well, locales, they were a job to hit because of the speed they were doing, but I think we managed to sink one or two on that particular day, but sadly we lost one man, and we got, I think we got lost one or two. We got shelled just before D-Day. We got shelled by German shore batteries. We were, I don't know where we were, but we were close to the occupied German or the French coast then, and we came under the very heavy German fire. I think there we did lose one or two people and quite a few injured. But
and you were a very young man. You were a very young man when this happened, weren't you? 17 years old.
I was still only, yes. Well, I was 17 and a half when I went to sea on there, and I think I was telling one of the British Legion people that I said, when we were escorting ships to, the Russian convoys, I said, I was old enough to be sent on Russian convoys, but I wasn't old enough to draw my rum Russian,
I bet you wanted that in the cold.
And yeah, used to scratch a bit off my shipmates, but until I was 18, I wasn't able to draw it,
So when you were involved with D-Day, Ray, did you feel how big of did you know how big of an occasion that was, and how did that feel to be a part of it?
Oh, it was when we saw all the ships, and they were towing all these Mulberry Harbours. They were all being towed out, and you just couldn't believe, it was just one mass of ships, and then, when we were close inshore, and the battleships were just, they were several miles behind us. They were shelling, probably about 20 miles they could shell into France. We were shelling very close all the time, just past where the troops were all landing. We could see the German occupied all the hotels and that along the front where they were stationed, and we were literally bombarding all along those. After, I think it was a couple of days or 3 days after the actual D-Day, we had to go, part of us had to go ashore and help the army move stores along the beach, which was a bit of a job, really. But I think the beach master said to us, he said, "You might be all right at sea, you lads, but you're bloody hopeless on land. You're more interested. You're doing more damage than help, really." told us to bugger off back. That was exact words, like.
That must have felt strange to be on French soil after years of war.
It was, yeah. And I mean, those the landing when we'd done where the Mulberry Harbour was, and then we'd made like a pontoon ashore, which, I mean, for June, the sea was so rough, it was getting forced to help while a lot of the troops were going ashore, but it was gradually being torn apart, it was such a rough day, which nobody expected it, really, but
the noise must have been
the noise was frightening, really, it was just one continual, bombardment from there, and then all we could see was like the battleships sail at sea, and then when they fired, then you saw like a huge great smoke rings were billowing towards the beach, and the noise of those guns, continuous firing all the time, that was the worst thing, really.
Is that something that's always stuck with you?
Well, it was the noise and to see the, damage that was being done, and we did see a lot of the, unfortunately, a lot of the tanks that were supposed to be, had these flotations on, but I think they only tried those in calm waters, and of course, as soon as they were being lowered from the landing craft, a lot of them were just sinking straight away,
So, Ray, you were a young man when you went to war.
I was, yes.
When you were a child, was Remembrance Sunday something that happened when you were a child, where you grew up?
I think so, because my father was in the First World War, so he won a military medal, which my son has got all his medals and his military medals. He used to tell us a little bit what he did, but I know he got wounded, but he never did tell us how,
And when you at the end of the Second World War, is it something that you wanted to remember at the time, or was it a time you wanted to put behind you?
Oh, yes, I think so. Yeah, I think I still kept in touch with the Royal Navy. We had a Royal Navy Association in Northampton, which I used to go to it, and you always remembered the, Remembrance Day and everything like that.
So what is important about Remembrance to you that you would like younger generations to know?
Well, I think really when you think of when we went, when did we go last year? We went with the British Legion to all around Sword Beach, around there, and what really stuck in my mind was when you saw the thousands of white crosses, and you just stood there and looked and just pictured that under all those crosses there's a young man, who gave his life to so that we can live freely, really.
What will you be doing this year? You mentioned you went over to France last year. This year, with it, unfortunately, people being locked down. Are you having? Will you be marking the occasion at home?
Well, unfortunately, I live on my own. I lost my wife 20 odd years ago. She was in the Women's Royal Air Force, and so. We always remember her on Poppy Day and everything on that. I think, I remember all of those, and my wife as well. That was the, sad thing about it. But I think really the youngsters nowadays, I don't really think they knew the enormity of what it was, and what everybody gave up for,
What do you think is the best way to make that younger generations understand? Because there's obviously something that I know myself and a lot of other people, we want to make sure that generations coming after us remember this. So how do you think we can do it?
The stories that people tell, I think that does go home to a lot of people. They do listen. Hopefully, I think they do. And I'm sure on Remembrance Sunday, I'm sure a lot of people will think, what it was and what it meant, what it means to them, really.
Well, while we have you, Ray, you're a young man in the military. I'd love to get pick your brains while we have you. Do you have any advice for? We have young people who are in the military listening now. Do you have any advice for them about how to get through their time in the military and how to make the most of it?
Well, I think just to listen to what people tell them, and I never regretted my time in the Navy, We had some hard times, but I think we also had some good times. I know, well, when the D-Day landings and all of that were over, and you begin to think, oh, we can sort of relax a bit, and then we got the same ship on the Middleton. I was on that all the time, and then, of course, the Japanese war was still on, so we were sent to South Africa to get a refit the ship, to refit it out for tropical use, and then we were headed for the Japanese war, but I think fortunately for all of us, the Americans came up with the atomic bomb, and I'm sure that shortened that war and saves, literally thousands of lives,
I agree. Ray, just before you leave us today, what's one of your favourite memories from your time in the service?
I think some of the hardships we went through, particularly on Russian convoys. The ship I was on, it never should have been on there. It was too small, really, and it literally got battered. I think we had more damage done by the sea than enemy gunfire. It literally. I think if we survived that, we got through anything really, and the comradeship on the Middleton was really marvellous. It was. I always said it was a lucky ship and a happy ship, and I think that's the memory that goes with me.
My name's Chris Purcell. I was in the Royal Navy from 1975 till 1995. And I served on HMS Sheffield during the Falklands conflict, which obviously was sunk and 20 people killed.
So we have young listeners listening, Chris, and obviously one of the whole points of doing this and Remembrance is that people do learn about what's gone before them. So can you give people just a view of what happened to HMS Sheffield?
Yeah, we've been away from the UK. We left in, I think it was around November of 81 for a 6-month Gulf deployment around the Persian Gulf. And then on our way home, our last port call was Gibraltar. And it was a Sunday evening, and I noticed quite a lot of air activity, helicopters buzzing around, and we were heading home the next day, Monday. We set sail from Gibraltar, and around midday, we got told we will be heading south to the Falklands. And, some of us idiots on board said, why does anyone want to invade Scotland, And then we got our geography lesson, saying what it is. Well, because we'd been away for 6 months, we thought we wouldn't be going down there, or we would be going down there, just showing them the white ensign, and then everything could be done, However, how wrong we were. On the morning of the 4th of May, 1982, I just finished a 6-hour watch and went for breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we were told to read a book or get your head down, write letters home, and then I went back on watch at 12 o'clock. Well, I was on what they call the GDP, gun direction platform, on the starboard side, the right-hand side of the ship, acting as a lookout and manning the guns. About 1:30, the boss, who was the boss of the upper deck, said to me, Percy, he said, you know all the chefs. He said, go down and get some hot water so we can have a brew. So I went down about 1:30, and they'd just finished lunch, really. So they were still cleaning. There was no hot water available. So I stayed down there. I put one of the steamers on, and I was waiting for the water to boil. Well, about 10 to 2, the water still hadn't boiled. And I was talking to all the chefs, and I said, look, they think I'm taking the piss, staying down here and nice and warm. So can you give me a shout on the GDP when the water's boiled? I said, yeah, no worries, Percy. So off I went back up top to the starboard side, and then that was at 10 to 2. 2 o'clock, we just see this fireball coming towards us from the starboard side, and it was an exit. It came in midships and killed everyone I was just talking to. And apparently that was the start of my PTSD, which is a lot in the news at the moment. And so I lived a lie from 82 to 95, and finally getting medically discharged with PTSD in May 95. So that's my story. I'm very lucky to be alive, but we have a good group of support from, people you used to know who you've got to know through the veterans agencies. And so that's my story.
When you say you lived a lie, Chris, you mean in the sense that you didn't acknowledge PTSD?
Yeah. Even though I was having flashbacks, I wouldn't own up to it. However, in 1988, around that time, over at our Royal Naval Hospital, Hasler, over in Gosport, which is not there anymore, they were running what they call a post-traumatic stress disorder course. And you'd go in at 9 o'clock in the morning or something, and you'd do group talks with other people who've gone through similar experiences. And you really open up. But after 4 weeks, the course had finished, and you had the opportunity to be medically discharged then, or carry on with your naval service. So I had a young family, so I thought I'll carry on. But again, the flashbacks were there. It did go away, and it wasn't till 1994 I was on my last ship, which was HMS Glasgow, and we were coming back from Russia, and we were having an exercise with the RAF, which simulated exocets and all this, and I just lost it. I went down to the mess, seen the doc. He said, come and see me when we get back to Portsmouth. This was around November time. And then by, I say the 3rd of May, 1995, I was medically discharged. And then I started, I was married at the time. I got married in 79, but when I came back from the Falklands, I wouldn't talk to my wife about what's seen or done or anything like that. So I bottled it up for 7 years, which the marriage failed. A couple of years later, I got married again, and I said, there's things I need to tell you, and I need to talk to her about it. Well, I'm not saying she wouldn't listen, second wife, but I think I must have got on her nerves. And that marriage lasted 7 years as well. And now I'm married to Louise. We've been married 20 years. And she listens, gives me guidance. She's my carer. I've retired from work now, But yeah, so my story is don't bottle things up. You know, although it doesn't, the problem doesn't go away, but you're able to manage and get the support that all ex-servicemen need.
I think it's important for everyone listening to take that on. And the other thing I'd be interested to know, Chris, is in the incident, because obviously you had to abandon ship, didn't you? And then the ship sank. What happened to you then? Because obviously you're down. You know, you're literally on the opposite end of the globe from where you live.
Yeah.
So what happened to you in the days and the weeks down in the Falklands after that happened? Were you put back to work or what?
Yeah. We were. Well, we abandoned ship. We had two ships come alongside us, HMS Yarmouth and HMS Arrow. Now, their captains were told not to come near us because we might blow up. So, but they took it on their own backs to come alongside. After about 5 hours of trying to fight the fire, the captain then gave the order to abandon ship. So the Arrow and Yarmouth came alongside, and we jumped on board. I jumped on board to the Arrow. We were put in the mess decks, and all their ship's company gave up their beds. They gave us beer and fags and all this. And then the next day we got helicoptered off to go on to RFA for Austin, Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship. And we were on there for about 10 days. We were given emergency uniform sort of thing, working dress, fags, and we were put to work doing the ammunition, basically, for the chaff launchers. And then after that, after 10 days on there, we got airlifted off that one and put onto an oil tank called the British Esk, which I think it was billeted for about 37 people, but with casualties and survivors, we had about 300, 400 people on there, sleeping in corridors or
on an oil tanker.
Pardon? On an oil tanker, yeah.
I've been on oil tankers, and I know how little accommodation there is in them.
Yeah. Well, I was sleeping outside the laundry, so there's people coming in, and you only had camp beds sort of thing. But the one good thing about it, when we got onto the British Air, I got called to the bridge to see the captain, and he gave me a signal saying my son had just been born, and everything was all right. Like, you know, they gave me 6 little tins of beer, and all the rest of the ship was dry, sort of thing. So I had more friends around me than anything. And then the British Air slowly took us back up to the Ascension Islands. So now we're talking 4,000 miles away from home. And from there, we waited for aircraft or the RAF to come, and we were home about the 27th of May. And obviously we couldn't look like survivors, the officers said. So we were all had to get haircuts and, you know, and we couldn't talk to the press. There was news blackouts on everything. And, so when I got to Bryce Norton, my wife was there with my 2 kids, well, my newly born baby as well. And then we got coaches home. And I hadn't been in the house 10 minutes. And we were in married quarters at the time. And knocked on the door by reporters, bottle of champagne. And I just told them to poke it up their ass, like, you know. So, so that's it.
Was there a lot of loss of life on the Sheffield?
A lot of what? Sorry.
Was there a lot? Did you lose a lot of guys on there?
Yeah, 20.
Wow.
We actually there was one lad. We got told we were wearing we had gas masks in them days. And we got told that'll give you about 3 minutes of clean air to get out of the smoke-filled compartment. So one of the senior rates, he started going down into the ship to try and get firefighting stuff. And basically we brought it up dead. Dave Briggs, his name was. But he was buried at sea that night. But that's the only... we've had a couple of suicides since off the Sheffield. I think there's been 2 suicides. But there's a lot of lads still, to this day, still bottling it up. Won't admit it.
So you buried the guys at sea when you had a service when you were down there, and they said that they weren't brought back to the UK. The guys that died.
No, they went down with the ship. There was only one guy buried at sea, but that was from the Herbies. I think they took his body too, so we could attend it. But yeah, the rest of them went down with the ship. They couldn't be recovered. So now she's a war grave at the bottom of the South Atlantic.
Were you had PTSD, you struggled. During that time, did you attend Remembrance Sunday events? Yeah,
I attended before. My mum and dad used to take me as a kid, so I've always worn my poppy. But then when something like this happens, it makes it more to observe, and think and take it all in, and then say goodbyes. There's not a day that goes by when you don't think about it. But obviously this year we've got to do our own things now, standing on the doorstep and clapping and remembering. So I think, the Royal British Legion as a charity, they're going to lose out on probably millions, because people have not been able to get out and plod the streets and shake the tins, But, so that's it.
How do you think that, you've got your own kids, do you approach the subject of remembrance with them?
Yeah, well, my Louise, when I met Louise, my third wife, she already had 2 children, 4 and about 9, I think they were. But in the early days of the relationship, I used to shout at her, and then they used to call me Mr. Volcano Head, because one minute I'd be nice and calm, next minute, the least little thing might kick me off, and start shouting at them. And it was just shouting. And so later on, when they grew up, I was able to open up and tell them. But when I'd be shouting at them, 5 minutes later, I'd expect I'd want to cuddle them, And sometimes, because they were so young, they didn't understand. But they're brilliant now, and they've given us grandkids, and they'll always remember. And I do parade marshal for the Portsmouth, and that's been a big privilege for me, marching with veterans, and that's brilliant.
Is there enough done to remember the Falklands?
Pardon?
Is there enough done to remember the Falklands?
Yeah, I mean, we've just had a plaque opened up this week in the dockyard to remember the dockyard personnel who helped all the ships get down there. And we've got a memorial down in Old Portsmouth to remember them all by. And, I publicise it whenever I can, sort of thing. But yeah, I think we seem to we do reunions of all the ships, like, you know, and you meet different people, different stories, and the banter is still there. Yeah, so that's it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, Chris, just about Remembrance Day or Remembrance in general?
Well, obviously everything's been cancelled. It's going to be a lot different this year. But if you can get out there and show your support, if you see a poppy by one, and let's not remember, not just the Falklands, but all conflicts. They're no good. They don't achieve anything. If you see a veteran, please, you know, just go up and shake his hand, or, you know, world wars and conflicts, people get killed and injured, and they've got that to live with for the rest of their lives. That's it.
Do you think we need to use remembrance as an opportunity to learn rather than just to be silent?
Yeah, we need it. It is, and you know, there might be people who'll be able to tell you whether they're a Second World War veteran or Afghan veteran. Listen to the stories; they're horrific. They don't. These conflicts don't achieve anything but death.
I'm Joe, name's British Rogue on Instagram. Joined the Army in 2004. Initially joined the Royal Tank Regiment. Served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Transferred to the Light Dragoons 2010. Left the Army 2011.
Did you know about Remembrance as a kid, or was it something you came into in the Army?
No, I was very aware of it as a kid. I had grandparents and that who served.
All right. You can expand a bit if you want, mate.
Yeah, it's something I was always aware of when I was a kid. Always went to the parades every year. If I weren't at the parades, then it was always on the TV in the house. The family was always aware of it. It's just something I grew up with.
Did you ever spend any of them on operations when you were out in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yeah, both of them. When I was in Iraq, was on that. That was over on there as well. Just as I was coming home, no, it weren't. Iraq was there. I was there for it, and then in Afghanistan as well. I came back from Afghanistan in the December.
How did it? How did it feel to have a Remembrance Day out on tour? Was it some? Did you mark the occasion?
We didn't really mark it in Afghan because we was out on the ground. So there weren't much, but I remember in Iraq we was at the coalition base and they had like a sort of ceremony thing on, but I wasn't in Bastion or anything in Afghan. I was out on the ground when it was on.
How's your kind of thoughts towards Remembrance changed after your service?
It has a lot more of a deeper meaning, because rather than it just being, because I was with one of them in between generations where my grandparents weren't quite old enough to have fought in World War II. They were like kids in World War II. And my great-grandparents who were in World War One were obviously all dead. So I had no direct connection to it. It was just a sort of grateful for what we have today because those went before us. But after the military, after having quite a few friends getting killed on tours, it becomes then something that's very, very close to home.
Is there anything in particular that you think of, like a place that you go to in your mind during that 2-minute silence?
Yeah, I mean, I can't help it these days, obviously, through the direct experience, what I've had. I think about those that were close to me that got killed on operational tours. I don't really think about World War II, World War One. I don't really think about sort of those went before us. I think that's that 2-minute silence is a time when you sort of reflect personally on things, and then for me that just stays in the moment with them friends what I had that got killed, not really the sort of bigger picture.
Do you think enough is done for remembrance in the country as a whole?
I mean, it's a tricky one, really. It's one of them sort of complicated questions because, like, when the Americans, they have the Memorial Weekend and that, and I kind of like the idea of that where everyone sort of celebrates and it's not just song, but it's a very British thing. And I think you can almost go a little bit too far with it, where it just becomes just another sort of piss up weekend. You know what I mean? Sort of like Christmas, where it sort of loses its actual meaning. I think the good thing that we do in this country with Remembrance is it never loses that meaning. It always sort of has that almost somber reflection feel to it, and not just another bank holiday, if you like. But I think especially this year, I think the government are doing a very bad thing by banning all these parades, that when they're allowing so much other shit to go ahead. I think that's a great shame and a reflection on the relationship between those who've gone before us, veterans still around and serving. It just goes for the relationship what the country has towards our own forces.
The last couple of years, what's Remembrance Sunday looked like for you?
I've kept it local. I've just gone to a local, it's not really big enough to call it a cenotaph, but it's quite a large memorial. Just a local one in my town. I've been there for the last 2 or 3 years. I've not been to any big cities or bigger events. In the last few years, I've started addressing my own mental health, and I've not really wanted to go around the big crowds and stuff. So I've just kept it small and sort of local to myself. And I'll be doing the same this year as well, lockdown or no fucking lockdown.
Do you go suited, booted medals?
Last year I did, but the other 2 years previous I didn't. I just went up. But last year was, I didn't really recognise my own service for sort of a long time. It was just something I did, and I just kind of blocked a lot of it out. But since I've started addressing issues myself, I've sort of regained that pride for what I did myself. So yeah, last year I put the medals on, and I'll be doing the same again this year.
I did medals for the first time 2 years ago, mate, and it feels really weird at first. You feel like a cheese bag.
Yeah.
But then you're like, well, I did go to these places, and I think the reason, what I thought was good about wearing them, and obviously it's not really the case this year, but what was good about them was when me and a few mates went for a drink afterwards, you then see other groups of lads in the same, and you strike up a conversation. We ended up talking with Welsh guards that were in Afghan the same time and stuff. And I think that was the kind of the good thing about having the medals on, was it basically opened up conversation with other people that were around. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. I mean, especially with the veterans. I mean, you look at the medals and you know what someone's done, you know where they've been. Although it can be a very varying experience, and tours may vary, you know what I mean? But you still, you can read what a man's done by looking on his chest, or woman.
Yeah, well, yeah. But like I say, let's be honest though, mate, you can usually spot. It's in the eyes, man. It's in the eyes. You can spot them in the eyes. But I like it, mate.
Been in the shit too long.
I was in the shit. I was on Operation Hastings. Mate, any other thoughts that you've got in general about Remembrance, or Remembrance Sunday, or just the act of remembrance in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone should just pay more, especially this year. It seems to have always been forgotten about. Do you know what I mean? I can get why a lot of the old people aren't out and about doing the poppies and things, because they're obviously all too scared to go out, because most of them are older to do all that kind of thing. But I think more should be done. We had this massive push, didn't we, with the NHS and everyone out clapping. And I'm not saying everyone should go out clapping for well, not veterans, but clapping for the people who gave their lives every week or nothing like that. But it'd be nice to see more poppies in windows. It'd be nice to see more people making an effort to show the support for that, because at the end of the day, everything we have today, everything we do, everything we enjoy, and all the freedoms we have would not be possible if it wasn't for all the sacrifice of the men and women that went before us. So I don't really think people have enough gratitude and sort of understand the gravity of how important that is, because we literally wouldn't have what we've got today if it wasn't for them men and women who died for it.
My name is Levison Words. I'm an author, photographer and explorer, but I have also been in the British Army since 2001. I spent 5 years in the Paras, and then since then I've been in the reserves, serving with 77 Brigade and other units. So yeah, the military's been a big part of my life for the last 20 years.
Do you have growing up? Did you have connections to the military, and if so, was Remembrance something that you knew about as a child?
It was. My father was in the TA, as it was known back then, in the original Mercian Regiment, and my grandfather was a private soldier in the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, serving in Burma. And it goes back, actually. So I think I'm the 5th generation soldier in my family. The first officer, but yeah. So Remembrance Day has always played a big part. My dad always took me to this, to Remembrance services. As long as I can remember, as a kid, we used to go every Remembrance Sunday. My grandfather was always there. They'd stick his medals on, and it was something that was kind of drilled into me as being really important. And I remember there was a period in the 90s when it kind of waned off a bit, and I was really glad though when it came to the forefront of people's attention. I think it happened probably around 2001 too, when war came back, really, and I suppose it reminded people of the need to remember veterans and those who served.
You're from Stoke, now you're living in London. Do you see a difference in how Remembrance is conducted between kind of like working class towns and the big cities?
Well, for the centenary a couple of years ago, I was in London for the big parade. It was enormous, and it was really heartening to see so many people turn up. It was absolutely rammed, and obviously the maroon beret got a crowd of us straight to the front, and the front line, which was good. But I do like to mix it up. Occasionally, I go back to Stoke, Burslem specifically, where my dad was from, and we go to the old the monument there, and it's it's sort of a crowd of varying sizes. But I guess as the veteran numbers from the Second World War dwindle, we're kind of buoyed up and reliant upon those who served in more recent conflicts, and so it's still going strong, and hopefully it continues to do so. Obviously, it's a crying shame this year that it won't be remembered in the way that it should be, but that's just the year we're in, I suppose.
Have you ever come across anything in your travels which you think maybe could be incorporated into the way that we remember?
So, actually, one Remembrance Sunday back in 2004. Yeah, it was November. It was the 11th, actually. It just so happened to coincide with Remembrance Sunday itself. I was in Kabul, not with the army. I was backpacking across Afghanistan, and I thought, and I'd read about the fact that there was a British and Commonwealth cemetery in Kabul somewhere, and it was tended to by a one-eyed sort of gardener who despite it being Afghanistan, and this was before there was any troops there, certainly British troops. This guy had been looking after this cemetery for most of his life, for about 50 years, keeping it clean, tending to the graves, and it was great to see that. So I remember I sort of made my way through these alleyways and found this cemetery, and it was an amazing condition. And some of these graves and memorials dated back to the 1840s. In the Afghan campaign, the first and second and third Afghan campaign in 1919. So it was a real reminder that everywhere in the world where there's been conflict, particularly where the British have been involved, there are these little cemeteries around the world, and I've seen lots of them, ranging from the ones in Europe, Normandy and places like that, to ones that are far afield. I went to the Kanchanaburi Cemetery in Thailand, and the sort of death railway victims, and it's a very humbling experience. And I think that we should just encourage people of all ages to remember the massive sacrifices paid by soldiers throughout the generations who fought for our freedom.
Do you think that going on a battlefield tour gives you like a greater understanding of what Remembrance Day is all about?
It certainly did for me. I mean, I was in Burma 3 years ago, and we went on a battlefield tour all the way to places like Michinyam, Mandalay, and saw the saw the exact battlefields that my grandfather had fought on, in all those years ago. And that certainly brought a tear to my eye, because it really brings it home. And you can only imagine the sort of the struggles and suffering that they went through. And I think it's a very useful experience, because, war, for those that haven't experienced it, is just a sort of word, a concept that doesn't really resonate. So by actually going and seeing these places, seeing the graveyards, seeing the memorials, it is something incredibly important, because it reminds us all that we have a responsibility to not just the memory of those who fought, but to ourselves, that we shouldn't take anything for granted.
I know you're in. I know you're someone that thinks a lot about mindfulness and this kind of thing. And do you see that there's a lot of benefits to the act of stopping, and the act of stopping for the world for 2 minutes, as it were, and thinking? That there's a lot of benefits to be had from that. Beyond just beyond what's on the surface of remembering the war dead. That there's something to be learned from the experience on a bigger scale.
Absolutely, I think just merely the concept of not thinking about yourself for a little amount of time, thinking about other people, putting yourself in other shoes. I mean, I've tried to do that throughout my whole career, is to try and have empathy with other cultures, and by the act of traveling, and by the act of trying to understand how other people think. And you can do that through meditation, you can do that through travel, you can do that through remembrance in many ways. In itself is, I think, a valuable and positive experience for us all to do, because hopefully it teaches a bit of humility and to be a bit more compassionate, considerate, and less selfish.
As we're moving forward, obviously, unfortunately, every year you see less and less of the old and bold at the services, and less people now have family ties to people that were in the military. How do you think that we go about engaging younger generations and future generations with remembrance, so that we can keep alive the memories of those who went before us?
Well, I think it's all in storytelling. It's in the narrative, and it's war's a bit sort of old-fashioned and not particularly fashionable to talk about these days, and we sort of, it comes and goes in fads, doesn't it? When we were in Afghanistan and Iraq, then soldiers were popular, there was military discounts and all this, that and the other, and then of course Tommy's forgotten when there's no current conflict, because people again go back to the norm of starting to sort of take things for granted again. And people, when we take peace for granted, then that sets the groundwork for conflict to begin again. And sadly, it's a very cyclical pattern. So I think it's about telling stories about conflict and war, not in a way to glorify it or to make it something that we should aspire to, because of course that's not the case. It's about telling stories about conflict, because it's important that we don't make the same mistakes and that we can avoid it. So I think the more of that storytelling that can come across in a positive way, the better. And it's not something we should shy away from.
Yeah, I do feel like it's something that's missing from it a bit. It's obviously it's very important to have the whole thing of remembering the people who did lose their lives, but we need to remember the reasons why that happened. And for me personally, that's something that I would like to see more of, not just in the services, but around the whole month. As a whole, we have a lot of time, we have a lot of devices, we have a lot of mediums. There should be, this stuff should not be hidden secrets.
No, absolutely. I was very lucky last month in August. I was approached by the National Army Museum to make a short film about my own grandfather. And that was a really special moment. I took my dad along, and we dug into the archives and found out a lot more about not just my grandfather's personal service, but that of his mates, and some stories that I'd not heard of before, and just how close he came to death on many occasions. And we followed that up by a visit to his grave back up in Stoke. And that was a really emotional experience, not just for me, but for my dad as well. And it brought us very close together. And I think that it would be, I'm sure a lot of people would find it very interesting to dig into their own family histories, to find those connections, because most people in this country do have relatives or certainly ancestors that have served, and it's to them, like I said before, that we owe all of our liberties and freedom.
So Dave Radband served with the 1st Battalion Parachute Regiment. Later turned into Special Forces Support Group. Served there for 12 years. Multiple operational tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, all that good stuff.
You grew up around Brighton Norton, didn't you, mate? So was Remembrance services something you knew about as a kid?
Yeah, well, my dad was a firefighter, so I kind of went into that services family, if you like. So Remembrance Sunday was always something we took part in.
What did it mean to you as a kid, if anything? Did you even understand what it was about back then? Yeah,
well, my granddad, well, actually, like he wasn't my biological granddad, but he's I call him a granddad. He fought in Burma. He was captured by the Japs. He used to tell me stories as a kid. He actually used to tell me stories about him getting an MID for rescuing 11 Brits from a PWRR camp. So obviously, I knew about the war personally as well from my granddad. Little did I know that I'd go on and get an MID some 20 years later.
When you were in the Paras, mate, was the Remembrance service something that was quite heavily focused on at this time of year?
Yeah, especially on tour. Even on tour, you'd find time to do a Remembrance service parade. I can actually remember what stands out to me is Afghan 2009. I'd lost my team in 3 guys in Afghan in August. I didn't want to actually do the Remembrance service parade, so I went out on patrol when everyone was doing the parade, and I actually crashed the lads out because I got into a contact. So the lads had to stop the parade and come and support me.
When you think about Remembrance, then like you mentioned, you worked alongside the ANA, the Afghan National Army. Do you think about those guys as well? Because I know people can get sucked into just thinking about that this is just a British thing, but obviously it's for a lot of us it's more than that, isn't it?
I think we owe a lot to the Afghans, mate. So yeah, they are thought of, not just on Remembrance Sunday, more so on Remembrance Sunday because of what it is, but every day really, because there's a lot of British soldiers that owe their lives to them. And I think that's something that people should know, to be honest.
Do the Afghans that you were with, do they have any tradition that's similar to this? Like, how do they remember their war dead?
I think they have their own tradition, but they don't have anything like us with the Remembrance Sunday. They obviously, someone's killed in the Afghan army and they're put in the ground in I think it's got to be less than 24 hours. I believe it is, and they have their own tradition. I don't know what they do later on in the years.
Do you find Remembrance, now that you're a civilian, do you find it's grown in importance to you, or there's lessened in importance? Like what's your kind of feelings around it now?
I think it's remained the same over the years, if I'm honest with you. It's more emotional now. Now you're out and you feel more connected to who you are, rather than just being that, I don't know, that soldier frame of mind. That aggressive. You know what I'm talking about? That aggressive person. But now I'm out of the army and I feel different. It's a lot more emotional.
I think age is the other part of it, mate, is having more empathy, because you realise, like, when you're a soldier, you're okay with the idea of getting killed and stuff, because you're like, well, yeah, I want to go out and fight and get killed and stuff. And then as you get older, you realise, well, hang on, a lot of these people were just kids that got told to go. A lot of them, it wasn't their dream to go and be a soldier like it was for us.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe what that is, mate, because you realise, like, I asked for this, what I had. They didn't ask for this, but they went and did it anyway and saw all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So when you were when you obviously, like, you've had some hard times in your life after the military, was Remembrance Day and that time of year a time that made it harder for you?
It was harder when I was struggling, when I was going through the whole PTSD thing. It was always the last post that got me. Even when I was in the military, really, we used to have so back in SOSG camp, we've got a memorial built with the guys on it. Families used to come down. and obviously seeing the families there, crying, emotional, it grips you, especially last post. That's the one that grabs you by the heart, if you like.
Yeah, last post always gets me, mate. I used to try and zone out for it and start thinking about something else, because otherwise I'd start crying. So I'd start thinking about something else, but then you're like, well, that's like the opposite of what you're trying to do. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's no point going to remembrance. It's no good going to a remembrance parade and then go, right, now I'm going to think about something else so I don't cry.
Yeah.
So you just gotta suck it up. What, like, it's a funny one though, isn't it? Because it's like you and me are both people that believe in telling the truth and being honest about who you are, but there's definitely a part of me, I don't know about you, that feels the resistance towards, it's like, oh, I don't want to be the person that's crying at Remembrance Parade.
Yeah. I think it's when I think what it is, there's a lot of people there, isn't there? There's a lot of people there. When you got your medals on your chest, there's a lot of eyes on you because, well, I don't know about you, there's a lot on my chest. So the eyes are on you, if you like. So you don't really want to, and your kids are there as well. And it's a tough one, isn't it? Why do you put on a brave face when you should just really let yourself go? I think if anything, you just try and be brave for the blokes. Really, blokes don't want you there like a bubbling mess. They want you there, pointing your hand, having a
tearing your hair out, tearing your shirt open. Like, why? But it's a funny one, mate, because I've never felt like, oh, I'm going to break down crying or anything like that. But you do get a few rollers. It's like shedding
a tear, isn't it?
Yeah, you get a few rollers coming out the corners. Like, you're like, what is this liquid coming out of my face?
Sawdust in the eyes, mate.
Yeah, it's more that. And to be honest, usually fucking freezing on Remembrance Day as well. So I'm like, oh, the wind, cold winds getting in my eyes. But no, it's a weird one, mate, isn't it? Because it's like, I find it very, you want to be there, you want to be present, and at the same time, like, that you can kind of get taken off your own head because you're worried about, well, I tell you what it comes down to, mate. It comes down to you're worried about how you get perceived by other people. You don't want to be perceived as being like, oh, I'm being weak, or also the other thing is, I think, is like, you're like, I'm thinking out loud about this stuff because I never really actually thought it through before, but you don't want to be, you're like, what have I got to complain about compared with those people whose names are on the fucking on the cenotaph?
Like you say, you haven't really thought about it, but I don't think any of us think about it because it's that time of year it comes around and goes. Like I said, going back to what I was saying, it's a day that you go on parade, have a few drinks, and then you never really think deeply about what the day's about. Really, it's just as bad as it sounds, it becomes like emotion for me. I don't know if it's because I just naturally want to switch off from it. I don't want to think too much about it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if maybe it's just because every day I think about the blokes that have died in Afghanistan, so it's no different to any other day.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about it, mate. I find it very hard to get my head into how other people see Remembrance as civvies, because obviously I think about my own service, like, I'm not going to say every day, because there probably are some days that I don't, but let's say most days, right?
Yeah.
But I'm always thinking about war. Like, war's like, as always, like, ever since I can remember, war has been what I think about. So I probably do think about, I might be thinking about the Dieppe raid one day, or I might be thinking about bomber crews one day, but I'm always thinking about it. So I can't get my head into how a civvy would think about it and be like, oh, fucking hell, there's a bunch of people died in a war. They're mad, isn't it? I'm like, well, yeah, do you not think about that every day? But people don't.
Yeah.
And I can't get my head into that, mate.
Maybe that's why it's not a prominent day for me or stands out as such, because we think about it every day. It's no different from any other day to us. We go down there, and pay our respects, which we don't do every day. But when it comes to actually thinking about it within your own mind, it's no different from any other day.
Yeah, and it's the thing as well, mate, like, every time I go past the cenotaph, if I'm walking, I stop and I'll read some names. And I actually feel more connected to it then than I do when there's a service on.
Well, my dad actually, in my local town, my dad's taken on the war memorial, so he maintains it. He had it pressure washed back to its original state, and it was actually unveiled 100 years ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and we were supposed to do obviously 100-year unveiling of it. Going to put Union Jack over it. Basically copy it exactly the same unveiling they'd done 100 years ago, but obviously COVID messed that up. So I often go down there with my dad and like refresh the flowers, put the fence up, pull the fence out if someone's reversed into it, which has happened a few times. Just maintain it with him. So, like you say, when I've done that in the past, I feel a lot more connected to it in some ways, some days anyway.
Part of me feels like we need to get civvies to take the lead on Remembrance Day because, like you said, you're probably remembering every day if you're in the military either. Really, this needs to be a day where we get civvies to think about it more. And I think maybe, from what, I've done a few of these interviews now, mate, over the last few days, and everyone that's been in the military said the same thing. Yeah, I think about it all the time. So I'm like, well, maybe we're not the right ones. Like, when we go, I was very lucky to go to the Albert Hall last year for the service, but maybe having military people taking up most of the seats in there isn't the way to go because we're already thinking about it.
But then you can see why it's fading out on civvies. Probably fading out is the wrong word to use, but you know what I'm saying. Civvies aren't really that interested in it nowadays, and it's one of those things that's slowly fading out. People get moaned at about poppies, all that.
What now for you with your kids and going into the future? Like, where do you see your kind of connection with Remembrance going? What do you see as you, and what do you see as you, like, in your own way doing Remembrance?
Well, I was actually going to get onto that when if you didn't ask, but 2 days ago, on Saturday, we went into Tesco and gave my little daughter £5 go and buy some poppy stuff, which is old guide British Legion, obviously. And she said to me as we walked away, "What are the poppies for?" And I thought, how do I explain this to her in 5-year-old terms? So I just blunt about it and just said, look, a lot of men died in war. They're giving us the life we've given now. And also we remember Daddy's friends who were, because they call it the Kingdom of God at her school, churches. So I said they'd gone to the Kingdom of God, fighting in wars to protect us. And she just stood there looking confused. And I thought, maybe a story for later on. But how do you explain it to a 5-year-old? But I think all you can do is just keep, not drumming it into them, but, keep reminding them. I think as they grow up, they're going to get to know that Daddy was in the army. Daddy went to Iraq and Afghan, and like my little boy, he's just para mad. He runs around the bed, around the house shouting paras. You go around his house, go around the house, mate. He's there with an optical helmet on, an S10 respirator, banging on the door with a BB gun. So I think he's going to get it quicker because he's more interested in that military life. But one thing I am not actually really proud of is the schools are pushing it out there.
Really?
I've got a letter today from a little girls' school explaining what they're doing for Remembrance Sunday. And they've got to make poppies, and they've got this massive board that they're going to put all their poppies on and colouring in like the black soldiers, the stencil soldiers, if you like.
Yeah.
Which I think is really good because obviously schools are pushing it out there as well. It's nice to know that.
Hi everyone, my name is SJ James. I'm the co-founder of All Call Signs, a peer support network for veterans and service personnel. I served in Northern Ireland with the 2nd Battalion, Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment.
How long did you serve for, SJ?
5 years, mate.
Yeah. And how long's All Call Signs? How long have you been going for now?
Say that 3 times fast. We've been going 2.5 years now. We've had our drop-in centre in Southsea open for 1.5 years.
And just let people know a bit more about what you do. Obviously, Dan's been on the podcast before, but just give people a little refresher course.
Yeah, so there's 3 main services that we provide. So the first one is peer support for veterans and service personnel that might be of low mood or suffering with mental ill health. So that's making sure that they can access the correct healthcare pathways that are available to them, make sure that they're able to get the support that they need. And that can be everything from socialisation support, so things like getting them into armed forces breakfast clubs, getting them on days out, getting them integrated back into the military community, all the way through to clinical treatment like CBT therapy and things like that as well. The one that probably most people know us for is our beacon alert system. And if somebody goes missing from the military community and they're believed to be at risk of self-harm or suicide, then we create ground teams that can go out and search for that individual alongside existing search assets like the police and search and rescue. And then the third arm is probably the one that gets talked about least, but is equally as important, is the campaigning side of it, and the talking to MPs, talking to the NHS, looking at all of the current service providers, and just trying to bring around a little bit of reform in that space to make sure that the right services are available and that they're designed for veterans.
Hi, so I'm Dan Arnold. I'm 50% of the team that founded All Call Signs. I served also with the 2nd Battalion Princess of Wales War Regiment. I was fortunate enough to serve in Northern Ireland, Iraq and Afghanistan.
Story topper. Right, boys. This time of year, are you seeing do you see more calls into All Call Signs? Do you see, do you see more dramas with veterans, less dramas? What kind of thing you've seen around this time of year?
Yeah, it's a typical busy time of year for a lot of the veteran community and serving community, I think. Things like Halloween, Remembrance Day and Firework Night all kind of run around this year, this time of year, where we see increased numbers of people reaching out for support, whether that's older veterans at home being tormented by kids knocking the door trick-or-treating, or fireworks being triggered by, or veterans being triggered by fireworks. You got me at it now, mate. I can't say it either. With Remembrance Day, naturally, that's a big anniversary for a lot of us, where we start to contemplate more about kind of losses or events that we had. 2020 being the hot mess that it is with COVID, we've seen high numbers of people coming through anyway because of anxiety, stresses, unknowing where their next paycheck's coming from and things. So yeah, it's been a really, really big year, and we're expecting the numbers to go up, especially more so if we go back into some tier of lockdown. As we see various different parts of the country get locked down, people start to isolate again, and the associated impact that has on their mental health and well-being.
Do you put on any specific services for Remembrance Day, or is it more of the same?
So yeah, it's been difficult this year, and we've been trying to find out from the community whether they want us to do an online kind of presence or things like that. It's really difficult with social distancing that people can't get together. For a lot of the community, that's the one day a year where they'll meet up with people that they serve with to kind of put a couple of pints back, and they haven't got that this year. We're asking the community what they want, but we know there's some really great online offers from other people in the community, like Walking for the Wounded and the Royal Navy Royal Marines Association. So I think we're just going to join in with theirs this year rather than duplicate lots of different services.
Okay, SJ, is there anything in particular, or anyone in particular, or any event or story in particular that you think of when it comes to Remembrance Day?
So Remembrance Day for me, it goes to two places. So firstly, I think about the kind of the traditional remembrance, so like World War I, World War II, and I think about what that meant. And generally the story is just really kind of compelling, isn't it? The idea that these people that weren't military by trade, they weren't soldiers by trade, they answered the call, they picked up arms, they went and fought for their country. And there's that really kind of patriotic piece, which I think, even trying to imagine that in today's climate, the idea that just the general public, the general, men of the country would go and kind of join up and go and fight overseas for their country is just really kind of overwhelming. It just brings a lump in your throat kind of thinking about it. But then I also think of a friend of mine, John, who unfortunately lost his life. And I think about conversations that we had, because he'd originally got out of the army and wanted to be a firefighter. And we were talking when he was out about potentially coming down and doing some bits of work for me. At the time, I was running a security company. And it just never came to fruition, and we never ended up getting back together and kind of having that conversation around it. And then the next thing that I heard was that he'd lost his life. Now, the thing for me was that I didn't even know he'd rejoined. I didn't actually know that he was back on tour. So to hear that just out of the blue was a little bit kind of left of field. Still something that I think about now, and I always wonder to myself if that conversation had gone different, if his kind of recruitment into the fire service had gone better or gone quicker, would he still be alive today? And my mind is always drawn to that around Remembrance Day.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think to echo SJ, I think it's everyone instantly typically thinks about kind of World War One, World War Two sacrifices. We were fortunate enough to stand on like Gold and Juno beaches last year and just see the flat expanse that those young men had to kind of run up under heavy machine gun fire. And I think everyone transports back there and thinks about those sacrifices. But also take time to think of colleagues that I lost, that I worked alongside with, not necessarily from my regiment, but when you go away on courses and do other things and you meet people, and those individuals that were lost and have taken their own lives after kind of combat as well. Really a big time to think about those. Also to use it, to spin it and put a positive on it. It is a great time to meet up with the lads and kind of have a chat, have a beer, and just meet up with blokes that you might not have seen for like 5 to 7 years. You know what I mean? It's always a really, really good time on Remembrance Day. Me and SJ and a few of the lads get together and we think back kind of 2 or 3 sensible beers and just have a laugh and have banter with the boys.
So last year was particularly good in the sense that we actually kind of lastminute.com got pulled into the parade and was part of it down in Portsmouth, which is a huge parade. It's one of the biggest in the country. That's always been an enjoyable part for me, more so because you get to meet up with people that you don't necessarily see for the rest of the year, people that you might not have seen in a few years, and you just get to have that bit of banter, and it's almost like you pick up exactly where you left off. No time has passed, the conversation just streams as if you've had no time apart, and it's nice just to catch up with people and see what they're doing now. Within the veteran community, you can never really kind of gamble on what somebody's going to do when they leave, so you hear so many kind of wild stories about what people's careers are now, that it's quite interesting to meet up with people and do that. I think historically, I did used to like, even as a kid, going down to, so I'm from Chiswick, and the Remembrance Parade in Isleworth is always a big one because you've got Hounslow Barracks and you've got a lot of cadet forces just down the road as well. So it was always nice to go to that and just see kind of the old and bold with like racks and racks of medals and just all sharing their stories and, surrounded by their family. And for a lot of them, it might be the first time that they've seen them in their military regalia with their berets on and their medals and things like that. So it's quite nice that they get that time to be proud and stand a little bit straighter than maybe they normally do, and actually have the focus on them for a bit.
My name's Liz McConaghy, nicknamed Doris from the time in the military. But yeah, I left school after A-levels and joined the Air Force in 2001. And pretty much whizzed through helicopter training to end up at Odium on Chinooks in 2003. So I was only actually 20 when I arrived at Odium, and then was doing the OCF on my 21st birthday. And then straight out to Iraq at the age of 21, did 2 Iraq debts. Then we pulled out of Iraq and went off to Afghanistan. So did 10 deployments to Afghanistan over the years, because we only do 3 months at a time, just because we've got to keep our currencies and stuff back in the UK. So, but it therefore comes around pretty frequently. So yeah, 10 of those bad boys, and then ended up just over the years on a few Falklands debts and those kind of things and various other exercises. But yeah, my neck started to play up over the, basically I think when we pulled out of Afghanistan, it's funny how you can like ride the wave of pain until suddenly everything stops. And then yeah, I ended up getting med-boarded out last January. So into the big bad civvy world now, which is scary as fuck.
When you were a kid, were you aware of Remembrance Day and Remembrance in general growing up?
Do you know what? Not so much really, because being Northern Irish and stuff like that, there wasn't that many. Like we didn't go down to Remembrance services and that kind of thing. And although my brother's in the military, he joined a year before me. We're not a military family, so I'd say we were aware of it, but I didn't go every year, ironically. So
what was kind of your impression of it then when you came into the military?
Sort of. In the early days, still very much, it was sort of enforced, go along, you were on duty for the weekend, that kind of thing. It was a bit of a hindrance. But as the years progressed through my time in Afghanistan, it's one of those things that I would just never, ever miss now. And it really starts to resonate with you the older you get and the more experiences you get within the military, I think.
Yeah, me and one of the previous guests were sort of talking about this, saying, like, I wonder how many people would go in the military if it wasn't mandatory. Because it's very, you don't have a concept of death really and stuff when you're at that age, do you? Especially, and what other people have given up. So you mentioned it changed over time then. Do you remember any particular remembrance services while you were deployed that were particularly memorable?
I think most of mine were, again, coming to the remembrance thing, is not just remembrance on the 11th. It was things like ramp ceremonies, going to those. It became an honour to attend a ramp ceremony. It was never sort of a 3-line whip. And certainly towards the end of my sort of years, as I got a bit older and bolder, some of the young lads whinging that they couldn't go to the gym because there was a ramp ceremony on, and I got a bit medieval saying, you should be honoured to be able to go and attend that. So, I think there's nothing. And then I became quite heavily involved in the British Legion towards the end of my time in the forces. So I did quite a lot of stuff with them at remembrance services, but they always hit home a little bit more whenever you've lost a colleague that year, and you just sort of, it certainly resonates a lot closer to home.
Yeah, I think that's really an important point. Actually, I hadn't even thought about that. That there's that like bleed over from ramp ceremonies, the vigils and stuff that you get in Bastion and all that, because it follows a very similar format to Remembrance Sunday, doesn't it? So I hadn't even thought about that. It's a really good point. So when you were serving then, and obviously, unfortunately, as you do, you lost comrades, and you were on the MIRT for a while, so you saw firsthand, what was going on to the people, unfortunately, not making it out of there in one piece or making it out alive. What is remembrance? What does it mean to you now that you are, as you put it, a civvy?
Mm-hmm. So I think over the years, whenever I was initially on MIRT, picking up the guys in the battlefield and picking up guys that obviously paid the ultimate price, we had to sort of separate ourselves very much from it and almost still maintain our job and do our job, which was man the weapons, look out the window, get the aircraft safely back to Bastion. And you tried not to get sort of too emotionally connected with whoever you were picking up. If they had paid the ultimate price, you sort of tried not to let it be personalised. Otherwise, it would just sort of eat you up inside, I think. And over the years, that's kind of very much how I treated it. But I picked up, I can't remember what year it was, because let's say out there for so many deployments, it was one year picked up 5 British soldiers in one sitting. And when they came over the ramp, they were obviously on their stretchers already. And the guys who were putting them on, I think it was Fob Wishton, had put flags on top of them. So there was one guy with a British flag on. There was, I think, a Liverpool Football Club flag on one of them, a Rifles flag on another one, and they'd covered the bodies with the flags. So looking into the back of the aircraft and just seeing 5 stretchers with our guys on it, with the flags on top of them, I think that was quite a turning point for me, because now I find remembrance very difficult whenever I see flags. I wouldn't say it's a trigger for me, but it's certainly seeing a British flag now anywhere makes me feel it's just that instant memory and instant kind of thinking of what people have given up for us, really. So yeah. Have
you done have you done a remembrance service as a civilian yet?
Yeah, one last year.
Yeah,
so
how's that?
Yeah, I think again I've lost a couple of colleagues in the month of October and the start of October, end of October, that roll into November. So that kind of 4 weeks is always a bit tough for me anyway. But I feel I'm getting prouder, I think, to attend them as I get older. So I always still wear my medals, and I always will wear my medals to them. But yeah, it's I think it's getting tougher, because I think emotions as you get older mean a bit more to you. So yeah, it's tougher to stop the old tears rolling down the face these days.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think our attitudes towards it change when we get older?
I think because you realise what you've maybe, those guys who have lost their lives, and what we have generally, you appreciate a bit more as you get older in life anyway. I think that comes without saying. So I think you appreciate, because you appreciate what you've got more, you appreciate what they've given up.
I suppose part of it is like, if you're 23 and your friend's 23 and dies, then you're still at that same point in life, aren't you? But then once you're 33, you're like, wow, they didn't get any of this last 10 years, which was amazing.
Exactly.
I think you just get more empathetic as you get older as well, don't you?
Yeah, and again, one of the guys I picked up very early on in my career, picked up a guy from Kajaki who had been killed, took him back to Bastion. He was Marine Curry, and again, I never really tried to sort of follow up stories and things, but years and years later, I was one Sunday just reading the papers down the pub on a Sunday morning, and there was an article in the Sunday Times about his wife and about how he proposed to her before he went to theatre, and all of a sudden, I just sort of broke down in tears, and my partner at the time was like, "What's up?" And it was just because suddenly there was that personal connection of the other part of his life that was, obviously I'd never had an insight to that. And it really, really struck a chord with me. And it's just when you see what, the loss that's left behind.
I think that's the hard part though, isn't it? Is to get, especially for people now, because most people haven't been in the service. So I think part of the problem is when you trying to get younger people to remember, and by younger people, I mean anyone whose parents weren't involved in the Second World War. You got these names on, got names on monuments, but it's, like even though you were there, you didn't have that personal connection to that person.
Yeah.
How can we get younger generations to realise that these people that they're seeing on, like, because there's statues and or cenotaphs in every village, every town in the UK. How do we get people to realise that these were human beings on there who gave up everything in their future, and they're not just a name on a monument?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two things that would really help the young generation get involved, and certainly with the British Legion, is tapping into their grandfathers and any of those sort of. There's a lot of people who have got grandfathers and actually grandmothers who were involved in the war that they never really chased up their family history. It was just like, oh yeah, that happened before I was born. It's not important. But when you make that personal connection as a family and you realise that it was someone who was your flesh and blood. That seems to kind of resonate a lot with the younger generation a little bit more. And certainly from my point of view, I did a battlefield tour about 2 or 3 years ago, and that was the first one I'd ever done. Actually, the air was being med-boarded out. And I think the visual representation, when you actually just see the graves and you see the sheer amount, the sizes, like just the rows and rows of them, it really hits home. And I think that would be another thing that sort of children doing battlefield tours and just seeing not just a list of names, but just crosses in a field is just, it's pretty overwhelming, I think. Is there anything else, just in general, that you'd like to say about Remembrance, or just any thoughts that you have about it? I think an important thing for me as a veteran is that the Remembrance in November, throughout November really, is a good time to kind of catch up with a lot of your old colleagues, because I think part of the coming out of the forces and being a veteran and some of the things I've seen, they do sit with you and they do creep up and sort of bite you in the ass whenever you leave. And certainly when you're not in that sort of band of brothers and still in the forces, you don't have that chance potentially to go and sit in the pub anymore with your old mates, on a Friday night. And it's a good time, I think, not just on the 11th, but the whole month of November, the run up to the 11th, is just to connect with a couple of old mates, even if it is via social media. And certainly from us as Chinook crews, there was different people who were in different merch outs with you who experienced the same things. It's just a nice time to almost reconnect with a lot of your old colleagues and discuss things. And I think that helps with a lot of decompression and PTSD stuff as well. Did you enjoy parts of like Remembrance Sunday last year? Yeah. Like which bits? Just I think the pride of being a civilian and a woman and having the medals on my chest. It always surprises a lot of people and catches them out a little bit, and they're like, oh, and it's always a conversation opener as well. Because it's one thing, it's when you're in uniform, it's pretty obvious what you do, but it's actually quite nice now to be quietly proud of what I do.
Hi, my name is Mike Chadwick, commonly known as Coach Mike Chadwick on social media. I've served with the Parachute Regiment, most notably and most recently in Afghanistan. You're now a civilian, mate. It's going to be your first time on first time as a civvy for Remembrance Day. But how about your childhood? Was it something you were familiar with then? Yeah, my dad was a serving soldier, so it's always been prevalent throughout my whole upbringing. It became even more prevalent when I felt a part of it throughout my military career. And it's probably going to get even stronger. And you could probably answer that better than me, mate. But it's probably going to get, the feelings will get stronger. And as soon as you stop and you start realising the things that you have done and the people who aren't here anymore, it'll probably become a very big part of my life now. I
think the fact that you're a parent might factor strongly into that as well now, because you realise what people gave up. These people that gave up their futures and people that went away with families and didn't come back to them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's part of the reason why I've left, in all honesty, mate. As soon as I had my little girl, I just couldn't envision that anymore. It was really difficult for me to get up and go away, as I did for the first short part of their life. And now I want to spend as much time as I can with her.
Do you think that brings you closer to understand? Do you think that brings you closer to understanding the level of sacrifice that people have given?
Yeah, 100%. I try to put myself in the shoes now of others who, when I was deployed, who did have kids back then. It's hard to think about, mate. It's hard to put, because it's not just a toll on your body wherever you are in the world. It's your support team as well. I've spoken about that before, about the absolute burden you leave on them. It's really difficult for them.
You were in the parachute regiment, which obviously had a very strong, one of maybe the strongest esprit de corps and regimental families. What was and how was Remembrance approached when you were in the reg?
Strongly. Everyone got together. The brotherhood that we have is incredible, and that is heightened even more so. Once a year, it's a Remembrance Day every day for most of us, isn't it? But once a year, everyone gets together, whether you're serving or a veteran. We still all get together. I do mine over in Liverpool, where all the parachute regiment, all the Scousers, they all get together. And, the amount of numbers that we get is just incredible of, ex-reg blokes, current reg blokes, potential reg blokes, all getting together is just amazing.
We understand that there's very poignant moments in Remembrance services. There might be some very sad moments in Remembrance services. But what's your favourite part of it?
Standing still for a couple of seconds and just forgetting everything and remembering. It's not very often in our busy lifestyles that we get to have a pause and consider everything that we've done, consider the things that people are doing, considering the things that people are going to do. It's a lovely moment to just step back and just have a couple of minutes to yourself in silence, and everyone else is silent and everything else stops moving. Just for that couple of minutes is lovely.
I know you're a fan of mindfulness. Is there, obviously we're so kind of hectic in the way that our minds work now. We have things constantly trying to distract us in our pockets or in our hands most of the time. And, when they brought in this 2 minutes, it was in a time where people were a lot more present in what they were doing. Do you think maybe we need to kind of have a look at ways of bringing people into the moment more now? Because if it's not something that you train your mind to do, it's very hard to actually think about one particular thing for 2 minutes, isn't it?
It is in this day and age where, the media, data, everyone around is moving so quickly. It's so difficult to just, like I said before, stand still and have a few seconds to yourself. So I completely resonate with what you're saying. I completely agree that it should be something that we take more seriously and have some more time for ourselves to have, to reflect on and for action. Throughout all my coaching prevalence, I push that upon all of my athletes about reflection, because we can't move forward if we don't reflect. So I say it to everyone else, and I'm probably thinking about it now. That do I do it for myself? Probably not. I do it once a year, and it's something that you really should take more seriously.
Is that an important thing about Remembrance services then? It's not just looking back, but it's the ability to move forward through reflection?
I think so, mate. Yeah, I think it's, to move forward, we need to understand where we've come from. And some people struggle in life, don't they? And they can't get past some of those memories that we've had before. And I think it's difficult for a lot of people. And so having that thought process and looking back will help people move forward. So I do think it's vital.
What are some of the lessons that you take personally from Remembrance?
The ability to just stop and think. I started this conversation with how difficult I find it to stop in a fast-moving world. And the lessons that I learn is just, some of the stuff that we have done, man, is absolutely crazy, isn't it? And I know you yourself over in Iraq, some of the stuff when you stop and just think about it is unbelievable. And it's hard to express that. And it's hard to put that into words to people who don't know and don't realise. And it's only when you really look back at it do you realise how crazy those things were. And some of the stuff we've done is unbelievable. And unfortunately, some of the people we've lost that paid the price, the ultimate price for that. And it's not just what we did. And we think even further afield, going as far back as, without missing any incredibly hardened battles, is back to the Falklands and World War II and World War I and even before that. What those people did to allow us to do stuff like this and have a podcast and have those 2 minutes of silence is unbelievable.
My name's Sean Jones. I was a former colour sergeant in the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment. I served for 16 years, thereabouts, give maybe a little bit more. And I left about 2.5 years ago.
Mate, you came to the army early in the sense that the family were involved with it. So what was Remembrance like for you as a child?
If I'm honest with you, it was probably more of it when I was younger, as in like toddler into my young sort of infant school days, because of the town I lived in, and because a lot of my family was my great nan was still alive then, and I think all her brothers died and fought in the war and all that sort of thing. So I think it was a lot more then. But then when I moved away and I was living in the military environment, I don't really remember a huge amount about it. I knew that it was like one day a year we would go into camp and go into the mess, or go and do some form of service, but I didn't really understand it all too much, if I'm honest with you. It wasn't really forced upon me.
What was the kind of impression that you got from it as a kid?
I probably got more of an impression from it of it being a very, very serious thing when I was younger, because I'd have like my granddad, who was still around back then, doing the old, during the war type stuff, and I'd go around on a weekend and he'd tell me stories about the war. Whereas like my great nan, who wasn't related to my granddad was on my dad's side, but my great nan had a real different view on the war. She wouldn't speak of it really, and then whenever I asked a question, she would almost fob it off because of how it affected her family. Because I think that there was a lot of brothers and fathers and all that sort of stuff on my great nan's side of the family that all died in the war. I think they really, really suffered. I think she worked in the factories and that sort of thing. So my granddad, who fought in the war, was a lot more open to talk about it than what my great nan was, who supported the war effort, but she was affected by it with loss a lot more.
You served in the army for 16 years. I'm assuming that you spent some Remembrance days overseas.
Yeah, and I think that most of the time when you spent those away, it was almost like it was another day anyway, if that makes sense. You would do a small service, really, but there would be the main services and the main operating bases, which were still quite large and en masse, to be honest with you. But I think the thing with us, obviously where we were stationed, where we were operating out of, they were very relatively small gatherings of mates, really.
What do you think for you, like, as obviously now a soldier and a veteran, what parts of the service really kind of stand out to you? What parts, if any, kind of really kind of do you feel really you kind of most connect to?
Really, it's the we will remember them, because I think you can have remembrance services all over the world, and different people do them, and they all really carry a very similar format. But for me, it was the we will remember them piece on the end of a service, because for me it would be me remembering people that I knew or know through service, and they'd lost their lives. Or you would think back to, your grandparents, that sort of thing. So for me, it was always like the back end of a ceremony that you would sort of feel something about, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So,
because a lot of service, when you're in the military, a lot of services can all seem very, very similar. Whether it's a Sunday service that you go to, because you will go to any number of those throughout a year if you're in the military, or whether it's remembrance services, and they're all cover a certain similar sort of format. So it's really, on Remembrance Day, it's all about that personal piece of remembrance with the silence at the end.
I think there's a difference as well, isn't there, between choosing to go to one and being told to go to one. Even if you would have gone anyway.
It's an interesting concept, mate, because in the army, it's like you're going. It's on Part 1 orders, and everyone turns up, whatever day of the week it is, and you'll go and do a service. But it would be interesting if the military was to put that to it being something you could just volunteer to go to. I don't ever see that would happen, but it'd be interesting to see, because I think society has changed a lot.
Yeah, it's just something that seems to be. I think most guys would probably choose to do something like that, but it's just an interesting one that it's like, right, this is something that you have to go to, because I think there's something, when you make something go to someone, it diminishes the importance of that event. If you're like, right, you got to go to this wedding, it's not like, we've all been to weddings that we didn't want to go to. It's just not the same as going off your own back. You don't, there's something about that act of choosing to go. What does remembrance mean to you now? Like you've been out the army for a while now. You have a beautiful, magnificent beard. What does remembrance mean now?
Tough one, mate. Because it is a day where I'll reflect on my career, but I've always seen remembrance as remembering people from the great wars, the big wars, World War I and World War II. And I do find it difficult to tie in what we fought in as being remembrance. It's a weird one to put, because we all served in conflict, but I see Remembrance Day as remembering people from the big wars. But there is an element of me that does remember some of my friends and some of the things that I do on that day. So it's a really strange concept, to be honest with you. But then I do have the viewing of it that there is an annoyance in it a little bit as well. It does slightly annoy me, because you'll get people that despise their time in the military coming out to remember or to say they're remembering. And I don't know how I feel about those type of people. They get on my nerves a little bit.
I reckon I've thought about this a lot since we had a little conversation about this, and I reckon those people would have been around after the Second World War and the First World War too. People that wore a uniform but never got within 100 miles of the front line, who probably looked forward to Remembrance Day as a day to put their uniforms on and their general service medals and stuff and say, look at me. I definitely think that would have. Yeah, I think that's always been a part of the military. The military.
I think it has. Yeah, there's nothing against them. Just they hated it when they were in, and then when it's safe, they come out to support their medals.
Well, I was going to say, because here's the other thing as well. We're not like, if you could hate your time in and still want to remember people. I think what you're getting at is the people who are all of a sudden, it's like, here's one of the ones that kind of gets me is Remembrance month, Remembrance Sunday coming up, and all of a sudden, like, your pictures is like, well, I'm one to talk because I post pictures all the time of my military service all there, but it's all of a sudden it's right now I've got a picture of poppies around me on my Facebook, for instance. People start posting pictures themselves. I'm like, hang on, are you dead? Yeah. You're not dead.
Yeah. No, I see that a lot. It's happening now. The only time we've ever done anything like that, it's almost like a signal throughout my regiment, my battalion, where we change our pictures on social media profiles to our cap badge when something's happened to someone. And it's almost just like a signal of solidarity, but it's never around now.
I think it comes from a good place, though, mate. Like when people do that stuff, I think most of it is from a good place. I don't think most people who are doing that are trying to make it. They're trying to take part in it, but it can be misread. I think it can be misread as being like, look, Remembrance Sunday isn't about you. You're alive. This is about remembering people who are dead. Like it's as simple as that. You know. So with Remembrance Day now, then you've got kids of your own. How, do you talk to them about it? Is it something that is brought up with your children?
It's a difficult one because one's 9 on Thursday, one's 12, and they do have questions sometimes. But I think deep down they know what my job was and what I did in the army. But I think it's questions and stuff they don't really necessarily always want to have. So I've always been a thing of I don't want to force stuff upon my kids. If they want to learn or know something, they'll ask the question. But when it does come to Remembrance Day, I have taken them to Remembrance Parade before. What that did was for a small period of time on that remembrance service, shall we say, it made them think, and you could see that they were a bit somber because they could see the mood. But ultimately what it did for them because of their age was just that they can tend to go on a little bit. And they were freezing, to be honest with you. And it kind of took it away from them. So what I never want to do is force something like that upon them. I might take them for a walk past a service, but I don't think I'll take them to a service, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing as well, mate, is it's like the whole thing about remembrance is remembering the dead. And it's very hard for kids to grasp the concept of death. Fuck, it's hard for someone in their early 20s to grasp the concept of death. And then when we're talking about death it's like, oh yeah, all those millions of names, all those millions of people, yeah, they all died in a war that happened, a place that you've never been. Like, it's a lot to ask kids. Like, it's hard for us to take on.
Well, I took them when I lived over in Germany. Obviously, that's where my unit was based. We went on a couple of trips away, and I took them to various, sort of what they called. God, the words out.
Battlefield tours.
Not a battlefield tour, but I took them down to like Bastogne and saw the Commonwealth war graves. That's what I was after. We went down to see some of the Commonwealth war graves, and they were actually really interested because it wasn't just touring a load of cemeteries. They were really interested with what they looked like and why they were so clean and were any of our family there? Because when every single one of them, there's a little book that's got all the names in it. So if you go to any Commonwealth war grave that's over a certain size, there's a diary of the names and where they're buried and what units they were from. So they would go into each one. We went and visited quite a few. Went to each one and seeing if there was any Joneses, kind of a common name. So there was quite a few. But then we looked for extended family names and things like that. So whilst they're quite somber places, I made it, interesting for them because they are actually beautiful places to visit, and it's a lot better way to teach the kids. Because I don't think the kids should ever forget what happened, because if things had gone differently back then, in the Great Wars, as I want to call them, or as they get called, things had gone different back then. Life would be a lot different now.
Absolutely, mate. Anything else you want to say on the subject of remembrance before we part our ways, mate?
No, mate. Just that I think it's important that everyone gets to remember in their own way, whatever that is. We touched on it briefly with forcing people to go and remember, and the new generation of people might want to remember in a different way. And I think it's important that we respect people's way that they want to remember things as opposed to the way that it was, because it's not necessarily always the right way.
Hello, I'm Antony Cotton. I'm the first ambassador of SAFA. I'm a lead patron of Help for Heroes, and I work with the MOD and particularly the Army, but the MOD on their mental health welfare practice and process. So I have several caps, really. I have one which is direct, face-to-face, one-to-one with soldiers, and then the other one is in a more kind of using my platform for the charities to get their various projects or initiatives attention. And then, and the two worlds kind of mix quite nicely, really.
When did you when did you first kind of come to Remembrance Day, Remembrance Sunday? Was that something that happened in childhood?
Yes, I was always aware of the Remembrance Weekend, as most people are, with the poppy. It's the Remembrance, British Remembrance is an incredible. I don't want to use this term because it makes it sound glib or in some way fashionable. I don't mean it that way, but it is an incredible brand. The Remembrance Weekend, from the Royal Albert Hall, the visual of the poppy, the audio of all those songs that we know, the old war songs. So it's the dream brand, the poppy, really. The Legion are very, very lucky to have that symbolism, because it means that no matter who you are, no matter what age you are, no matter where you're from, you see that one image and it immediately tells you what it means. It's immediate that it's remembrance. So for that reason, I remember the weekend, the 11th of the 11th. It's just in my, in my psyche. My granddad, went to war, but I never met my granddad. He died before I was born, but he was fished out of the water at Dunkirk. So I suppose there's always been an element of being aware of Remembrance Weekend. The main thing that I support, even though I don't agree with war, I'm not interested in that part of it. I'm here to support the people, the men and women of our armed forces. That's who we're remembering, the sacrifice and the, when people sign on that dotted line, they're willing to lose everything, and that takes a particular kind of guts to do that. And so my remembrance to me is remembering the people that fell, of course, but it's also for me about the people that are in my current life that I'm interacting with or helping or going on a journey with. It's that signing on the bottom line, willing to give everything up, literally everything. And I find that to this day, I still find that extraordinary that people do it.
What will you be doing for Remembrance Day this year?
Well, Remembrance Day this year is a strange one because, I've just done a little piece to camera for the Legion, for the Poppy Appeal. And in that, I'm saying, Remembrance Day is going to be slightly different this year because people aren't able to go out, aren't able to meet even in some places. So this year will be spent just at home watching whatever output the BBC or whoever are showing, bits at the Albert Hall or whatever, but I'll be at home. I'll pay my respects in the day. I think I'll just wander into town and go. Because normally what we do is we go to the Cenotaph, then I'd meet up with all the Lancs lads that are in the Old Nag's Head in Manchester, and they have downstairs, and then upstairs is the Paralot, and so I'd just spend the whole day in town, spilled out onto the street with everybody that I've known over the years.
My name's Danny Mills. I joined in '84. I'm still serving now, part-time, full-time, part-time. And I originally joined the Queen's Regiment after a year of junior soldier training, which we spoke about before. And I went through, about 9-10 years with them. And then we are amalgamated with the Royal Hampshires, so Queen's Regiment, Royal Hampshire Regiment, made the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment with Princess Diana was our governor. And then I served with them, must be 15 or more years. And then since leaving, I joined 4th Battalion, the Parachute Regiment. And I've been with them. I'm into my 7th year with them now. So operationally wise, which is what the meat of this is really, I suppose. 1987, Northern Ireland, skip 98, 89, 90, Northern Ireland, 1991, 92, 93 to 95, Northern Ireland, 96, couple of tours in Northern Ireland. 97 was Bosnia. 2000 was Kosovo. And then let's have a look. Let's have a think. 2004 was Iraq. 2008 and then 9 was Afghanistan. 2010 privately Afghanistan. 2013 Pakistan. And 2019 was Mali. And of course, in the middle of that, there was a couple of the what they call operational, like Falklands and stuff, but you don't really feel operational, I suppose. But yeah, that's pretty much a quick rundown.
Mate, when you were in Northern Ireland, at the Northern Ireland days, what was it like for Remembrance then? Because obviously there was a very big homeland or mainland UK terrorist threat. Was Remembrance something that had to get done behind closed doors, or what was the situation like that?
Well, certainly when we were serving on a big tour, when you're like a proper on a enrollment tour, a 2-year tour, for example, like Omar, just after that, we left there. Oh, in fact, I was there the 2 years up to. We left just before that big bomb went off. So that's quite a poignant place. But of course, you had Enniskillen and all those sort of memories on the Remembrance Day, because the bastards blew places up then. But certainly those sort of safe areas, if you like, you had a full battalion parade, poppies on, laying wreaths and all the rest of it. Because, for example, Lizanelli Barracks, I think was the name of it in Omar, that had quite a big lump of real estate. So short of mortars landing, you were pretty okay. And then, of course, you had all the local satellite patrols and all that out anyway, protecting you. Certainly for the mortar base plate patrols and stuff, you know yourself what they used to do in all of the combat places. For the smaller places, it was a bit harder. I can remember being where is it? South Omar, little place like that, tiny little speck on the landscape on the top of a hill or on the edge of a town. It's a little bit more restricted, so you weren't standing around so much there. Belfast the same, because of the odd sniper attack or the odd gas bottle getting blown up and thrown over the wall and stuff. So certainly there was a lot more risk in the smaller places, little camps, but in a large barracks, it was remembered pretty much the same.
You've been involved in the army now for over 30 years. Have you seen a change in Remembrance in that time?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there was a dip. There was a dip in sort of the popularity of the forces I've seen over the years. When I joined, it was a large, pretty much quite a few families had somebody in the forces. Like I said to you before, when I joined, there was 155,000 just serving British Army of the Rhine. Now we can't even scrape together 80,000. Well, we probably could. It's just that we've just watered it down so much now. But yeah, I think it's raised its popularity again now. I'm not sure if Iraq and Afghans done it any favours, because you got that whole is it justified, unjustified, and all that sort of scenario. But soldiers don't potentially, they don't really get interested in those sort of conversations. They'll go wherever they go. Like now, they'll go and deal with someone with a COVID. If they tell you you're going to Iraq, like I said to you before, I was chuffed to bits. I couldn't wait to get out there and get some. You know what I mean? The fact that Tony Blair's a lying, POS and all that, irrelevant. You know what I mean? But, essentially, and well remember the guys, whatever conflicts they were lost in.
With that being the case, mate, because like you said, yourself, myself, we went out to Iraq and Afghanistan wanting to get some. A lot of the people that are remembered on Remembrance Day are people that got drafted and told to go. So is that something? Yeah. Is that something that you think about on Remembrance Day? Do you have a different way of thinking, maybe about the kind of previous generations that were told to go, rather than ours where we were like, right, this is what I want to be doing?
I don't know. I don't know if it's changed that much. I mean, essentially in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of people that joined because they wanted to do that sort of stuff. You know, certainly, you know, I think that was the you know, we had a bit of a glitch really. In the 80s, you pretty much had Northern Ireland and that was it. So if you were walking around a battalion without a Northern Ireland medal, you know, you pretty much, fuck, I'm left out here, I want to go. So that's what you did. You sort out those tours, and then they were coming along. Like I said, pretty much in the first 10 years, there was only 2 actual calendar years I didn't touch Ireland. But I think, you know, like I said before when we spoke, even when Gulf 1 came along, we were all painting Land Rovers and all that crap we wanted to go. But again, I was surprised about how many people I overheard, or even in conversation, saying that, you know, I heard one Muppet say, well, I didn't join the army to go for war. And I was just like incredulous, you know, and you just like, well, you in the wrong, why are you here, mate? You're in the wrong job. An infanteer that doesn't want to go and kick ass and chew gum is just like, what on earth are you doing, buddy?
Well, what does Remembrance, like, what does it mean to you? Like, what do you think about this time of year?
For me personally, I think about people that are being killed and that are not with us anymore. You know, I think the big one for me is guys I fought with. On a personal note, you know, as you know, I was the platoon commander of a particular platoon, but within that company as well, we lost people. And so that tour for me holds the most resonance. So, for example, a couple of years ago on one of my postings when I was in Brecon, I actually ended up as the chairman of the British Legion. And because most of them were old doddering guys waiting to push up daisies, I ended up carrying the standard a couple of times, and I took over chairman because, you know, they needed a bit of direction and all the rest of it. Having been in the mess and that for years, Warrant Officers and Sergeants mess, it just gave it a bit of a, you know, a kick. But, I mean, I found there, I mean, I ended up carrying, you know, just a couple of years ago as well, I ended up carrying a parachute regiment standard. I mean, I've actually started earning medals now in the parachute regiment as well, which is quite good. But, yeah, I tend to think about people that I know on a particular tour and that I have lost that are not with us anymore, as well as people like my uncle that was in Korea, my granddad that always used to get pissed on Remembrance Day and things like that, you know. Daniel, what have you done to Granddad and all that sort of stuff?
No worries. Last question, mate. Do you have a Remembrance Day story that is especially important to you, or something that like you'll never forget?
I think the important one for me was we had one. I just had a reminder when I went to the National Memorial Arboretum recently. First time I've been there. Okay, and I can remember there's obviously plaques on the wall there on the Iraq wall that the last time I saw, we was on parade actually in Bastion, you know, so you've got the shells and all the rest of it. They haven't done it exactly the same as what it was, you know, for the people that weren't there, that didn't ever get to see it. But, yeah, when I see, you know, pictures of Ray, the mortar magnet, you know, I can remember him now, or I'll get that picture of that brass plaque in the head. You know, he was killed on the 4th of August, 2004, just as it was all kicking off again. You know, we had a brief sort of spell in the firefights, in the battles. We had a bit of a lull. And then, of course, 2 days later, young Leo Callahan was shot straight in the heart, trying to help out, going to help out those artillery guys that got caught out and got lost in Basra, same battalion as me. You know, he's only 19 years old. Bang, one round down, he's dead, top cover or whatever. You know, so I particularly remember seeing their names on the brass plaque, and then of course now it's just reminded it already for this parade is probably one that I'm going to remember more than most, because I found it quite emotional and quite poignant going and see it to the Arboretum and seeing all those names, but in particular those 2 guys that obviously killed on my tour. One of them was in the same fighting company that I was in, you know, fighting Y Company. So I think this year is going to be a biggie for me.
My name is Hugh Keir. I served with the Parachute Regiment for just about 12 years. During my time there, I served in Northern Ireland, Iraq, Afghanistan, and since leaving, I've become the chairman of one of our regimental association branches, which all our branches are charities in their own right. I'm also the founder of Forces Barbarians RFC, which is a rugby club for military veterans, but it raises awareness and support for the military community. And I'm also involved in a bunch of businesses which are entirely veteran-owned and operated.
Hugh, you were like you said, you were in the military for like 12 years. Did you ever spend any Remembrance Sundays away on tour?
Do you know what? Yeah, I did. I spent two away on tour, if I remember correctly. One was my first operation, if you like, which was to Northern Ireland back in 2001. And then I spent one in Afghanistan on the third time out there, which 2010 that was, I believe.
What were those experiences like for you?
If I'm honest, the Northern Ireland way, I don't remember. That was the very start of my career. I know all of that, probably much like yourself. It's a complete blur, right? The one in Afghan in 2010 was quite a poignant one. We were split into different patrol bases and FOBs and things like that. I was lucky enough to be at the company HQ, and we had a little ceremony at the time outside, but it was a very short affair, but formal nonetheless, because we were in a very kinetic situation at the time. And it was actually very poignant to me. I think it's the first one that's I sort of got quite emotional at. It was the tail end of my career. I knew I was leaving. I had a lot of my friends killed in Afghanistan, and that was where we were holding that particular remembrance service. So, yeah.
Did you come to know about Remembrance Service when you joined the military, or was it something you knew about in childhood?
I knew about it in childhood, but I don't remember ever going to a parade. I'm the first person in my family who's military, since obviously relatives who served in the Second World War. Between then and now, I'm the first person. So although the family has a respect for the military, it's never something we actively participated in when I was a child. Not that I can remember anyway.
So what does Remembrance mean to you now?
Remembrance means to me now, it's taken on a bigger meaning than when I first joined the military. When I first joined the military, and we do it's all about the First World War, Second World War, predominantly remembering those soldiers. For me now, its meaning's changed, and it's a very personal thing to me. Remembrance for me means that is a day where I will actively, either in public or not, I will actively take time to remember everyone I knew and all those I didn't know who have been killed, made that ultimate sacrifice right the way up to operations now. That's the way I see it. It's the way of remembering the dead, not just when it became an actual event, after the First and Second World Wars. But everyone since then is equally as important. In my eyes, they paid the ultimate sacrifice, and it's my way of, saluting them, if you like.
You're a parent. Did becoming one change your view of remembrance and sacrifice?
Well, good question. Yeah, it did. Becoming a parent did change my view of it, and in such a manner that it seemed much more important to me, or it took on importance to me to make sure that the knowledge that these events go on, this month goes on, every year to acknowledge the sacrifices that are past. That is important to be handed down to the generations. Now, I'm not saying it's important and absolutely 100% everyone should go and do it, and every single child should grow up to be going to remembrance parades or commemorate the dead in some way, shape, or form. But they should certainly be aware of it. They should certainly be aware that there are incredible people that went before them. Because if they're not aware of it, then they're never going to be able to have the option to have that respect and have the understanding of what goes into wars and operations, regardless of whether they agree with it or not. On an individual level, the people who are sacrificing themselves, they did that for reasons, the most honourable reasons, regardless of the operation or mission they're a part of, regardless of how honourable you see past missions or operations. the individuals on the ground who gave their lives, they were doing that for very pure reasons. They were doing that for themselves. They were doing it for their colleagues and friends around them, trying to protect them, trying to achieve the mission. And they were doing it because at the time, that's what they thought was the right thing to do for the country.
Obviously, you have the H-Hour podcast where you talk to veterans. Is recording their history so that it can be remembered something that drives you to do that?
Something that drives me to do what?
To do the podcast.
Oh, right. Yeah, definitely. And I don't think that was the main intent when I started out doing the podcast. The main intent was just to communicate information, useful information to people. But a significant part of it now has become getting people on to tell stories of battles or wars or experiences and operations that are otherwise sort of not well known about on a personal level. Look at the Falklands, for example, the Falklands conflict. I've got someone coming on in the future who's involved in stuff in the 70s, and those stories have never been told in a medium like you and I do, which is popular now, as in the podcast medium. Those stories have been told before in books and, old documentaries, but that's not what impacts the younger generations now. And in fact, some of the most popular podcasts I've done recently have been with guys about battles and ops and wars 20, 30 years in the past. And they're resonating with people my age or younger, which is great because you're getting those stories out there.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to say in general about Remembrance Sunday, like a particular Remembrance Sunday or just Remembrance in general?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. There seems to be a lot of pressure. I feel it sometimes, a lot of pressure to go and pay your respects publicly, at parades, to be there with your jacket on, your medals and your beret. And I absolutely understand the reasons to go and do that. But that pressure is not great for the people that feel it. And each person likes to do things in the way that they feel like doing, and it varies year by year. I take myself, for example. This year, I don't think I'll go to a parade this year. It's just how I'm feeling. Last year, I went all the way down to London. I'd never been before to the cenotaph, and I ended up not going to the cenotaph. And I stood a tactical bound away, and I paid my respects that way. And the year before that, I was in my medals and gongs in Colchester with all the guys around me and enjoyed it. And the reason I highlight that is because that pressure and that sort of wanting to get out there, medals and have it all on show, that doesn't suit some people. And so they feel like it's a barrier to them paying their respects and honouring the dead and being a part of that Remembrance Sunday, and obviously on the 11th, if it doesn't fall on Sunday. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, Get out if you can. It's great to see people on the streets. It's great to see people paying their respects in that way. It's an absolute spectacle. It's amazing. It is amazing. It doesn't suit everybody. And don't feel like you're not paying your respects if you don't feel like going to a parade. It's about paying your respects. It doesn't matter how you do it. Remember the dead, remember your mates, remember your colleagues, and remember all those people before you didn't know.
So I'm Michael Coates. I did 6 years in the Royal Engineers. I was based in Paderborn in 3-5 Engineer Regiment. We did Telic and Telic 3. I got out after Telic 3 and joined the fire service, did 9 years there. And then started a veteran-owned company in 2015. We employ veterans, reservist spouses, partners. We educate children in conflict. We protect our customer, and we support injured service personnel. And off the back of that, amongst other things, we started the Declassified podcast. So that was all about documenting military stories to assist and guide and support people who are suffering from both physical and mental illness injury, mainly using the stories from the military community to impact society in a positive way.
Can you remember your first experience of Remembrance Day?
Remembrance has always been really traditional, and like it was always around growing up in Hull. It's quite a big thing. People are really they're really on it. They like to remember. They like to almost celebrate the day. And the first remembrance, I was in Boys Brigade when I was a little kid, maybe 7 or 8. And I remember doing a march through kind of East Hull and then doing like the religious thing with a vicar talking about the First World War. That's the first real memory of Remembrance.
What does Remembrance Day mean to you?
It's changed. Remembrance Day has changed. It means, it doesn't just mean the day anymore. It used to. It for me, it's about, the full year. It's about never forgetting the loss and the gain. I'm in a fortunate position where I can document stories, and I'm seen to document stories, and for me, it's about making sure the reality is there. Making sure that these stories never get remembered from our in brackets, our kind of modern day generation. And it's about being able to use those stories to educate others, not just about the negative, not just about those that we've lost, but some of the good stuff that's come out of it. So it's got to be worth something. The day itself is, maybe this is a weird thing to say, but it became not very relevant to me. It felt like it wasn't connecting with me anymore. Last year was the main thing. It felt like in front of a vicar talking about the First World War didn't connect with me anymore. And we're going to change things this year. We're going to do things a little bit differently as a small community. But I absolutely see the benefit of it. I think it needs to become a little bit more relevant. I think it needs to be a bit more educational. I think we have to really bring it into 2020.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Totally. What does Remembrance Day this year look like for you then? You mentioned you mentioned some changes.
Yeah, so I've been very privileged. I've been invited to Westminster Abbey, I think, next week. One of 3 veterans to represent the Iraq-Afghan generation. And again, it's a privilege to represent that community. But for us as a group of individuals, as a small group of us in the area I live in West London, we're going to do a very small gathering, and we're going to get into the cold water. We're going to get into the Thames. We're going to mark it with a reef. We've got some poppy flowers that we're going to release into the water. We're going to get in just before 11. And we're going to have a bit of mindfulness thought in the cold, and for me, that's very relevant. It's where I can think and reset. And everyone I've spoke to about that has been like, I want to be part of it. And we've got one in London that we're doing it, and we've got one on Merseyside as well. We're just 2 small groups, and next year we'll hopefully make it a little bit bigger. But it's for me, it's a mix of tradition one day, and then on the Sunday we'll do it for us a bit more relevant.
Has becoming more mindful been beneficial to you when it comes to remembrance?
Well, yes. I mean, certainly has, because it makes me reflect and stop and think, and it makes me listen to what other people have got to say as well. My brother's been a big influence on my life, and he did 20 years in, and he's one of these guys with 9-10 medals on his chest. And when we both said the same thing last year, that this isn't relevant, and we both get into cold water once a month now with a military and emergency services swims group, like a mental health swims group, that became the right thing for us to do, really, to be in the moment. Sometimes when there's like I said, a vicar in front, or someone who's religious, I have no connection to religion at all. And I just end up drifting off, and there's people around me. I just I get annoyed easily by things, and when it's not sincere and it's not authentic. So to be mindful with a group of my mates who have all served seems the right thing this year.
I think it's we can't expect future generations to keep remembering unless we make services more relevant to them, can we?
Oh no, and engaging, and we can't expect everyone just to stop on one day and watch the BBC deliver an amazing. That's another thing I remember as being a kid, is watching this amazing feat or the scenes on TV with everyone marching, and there's absolutely place for that to stay. But how are we going to connect? My kids and kids who are a little bit older when they're moving forward, when there's so much out there to grab their attention, when we don't make it engaging. You do a very good job with this podcast about, really taking it back to what is important, and the like I said, the reality of it, and the fun around it, and the sad stuff that happens as well. And the reflection is often more painful for a lot of people. But we have to be able to articulate that. We have to make it, again, relevant, and not just in a book at school. We have to make this part of our culture. And it's not glamorizing war, and it's not glamorizing conflict, and it's not glamorizing joining the military, but it is saying this is a big part of us. We've been at this small island. We've had the military. Look at every. If you were born or raised in this country, the military is connected to you in some way. You're not far removed from even knowing someone or being related to someone or having served yourself. You really are pretty close to that. And we have to ensure that that's through our culture's DNA. And again, it's not glamorizing it. It is just, it's the way it is. A lot of good has come off the back of it. And we have to remember the sacrifice of those that have come before us to allow us and give us that ability to be developed and to live the life we live.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about Remembrance Day or Remembrance in general, mate? Any other thoughts?
The one thing I do is I always, if we go to a traditional kind of remembrance service, I always try and pick out a name, and I always try and, I'll read everyone's name as much as I can and really take a moment or two on everyone's name, and then I'll pick out one name, especially during the silence, probably because I'm easily distracted by other things and there's people around me, but I always try and remember that person's name, and I try and imagine what their family was like and who they were as an individual, and just give that name a little bit of respect and a little bit of time, because that was someone like me. And I don't know why. I don't know if anyone else does that, but that's what I do. I always make sure that I give the names on there a little bit of time.
No, I do, mate. And I'd like to add to that as well. That's something I do. And I'd encourage anyone listening to, when you're walking through town or you're walking through the city or the village or whatever, and you see a local memorial, to just pause for a second. Even if it's not reading all the names, read a few names or one name, and then just think about that person, because that person was probably 18, 19, 20 years old, probably had the whole life ahead of them, and was from within, a few hundred meters probably of where you're standing right now, and they had the whole life ahead of them. They gave it up. And I think it's very powerful when you start, because it can be overwhelming, the amount of sacrifices happened. It's so big. It's hard to compute if you think about the entirety. But if you start to think about one name, and the fact that his mum got a letter to say he wasn't coming home, and he might have even had a kid that he never got to see, and you start to think about that stuff, and it just brings it home. I mean, it's fucking hell, man. It just brings it home to me just thinking about it now. It's devastating, but that's how we need to make it.
Well, I was up north in the summer, and we're in a place called Hornsey, and we took a week off, and we just went up to the north coast, and there's a little memorial there, and you can read thankfully you can read all their names from the First World War right up to present day in a couple of minutes, and we literally read them all out loud. And then the last one was, I think, 2002 or 2003, and a lad who died from the Yorkshire Regiment in Afghan. And as we were reading, and I was talking to the kids about, because they were all playing around, and I wanted them to play around there, but respect what was in front as well. I thought that was really important for me. They can still play around the memorial, but they have to understand what it is. And then an old lady came across and said, "Oh, look, he was only whatever he was. I think he was 20 or 21." And that was, so what was that? That was 17 years ago. But his daughter was something like 9 months old. Mm. And I was like, what a privilege it is to stand here with someone who's the same age as me, and he didn't get to see his kids grow up, but my children could play around where his name was. And that's the beauty of, I didn't know this guy. I have no idea who he is, but it's the beauty of highlighting one name and thinking about one person. And thankfully that lady came across and told us a bit of the history. And I suppose that's another thing is, go find out about one person's name. We have so many museums that are, and curators of museums that are totally open and want to be able to give you information.
Dean Scott, ex-Special Boat Service. I've served on operations in the Balkans and the Middle East. I'm very proud to be an ambassador for the Royal British Legion.
Mate, how did you first come to know about Remembrance Service? Was it something you about as a kid?
Yeah, well, my father and my grandparents were both in the military as well. So, grew up in a military environment, obviously growing up in a town called Aldershot, which was the home of the British Army. Remembrance Day was a big event for us. So yeah, from a young child onwards, it was hit home the importance of Remembrance Day and why we do it.
Is it something you'd attend yourself as a kid, was it?
Yeah, I used to go with my father anyway. At the time, he was a sergeant major at Gibraltar Barracks, so he was very much leading the ceremony. So we would go and just join our father. We probably didn't know too much about it at that age, but in schools in the area, it was very much taught about why we celebrate and why we're doing it.
So it's always been a part of your life, then.
Yeah, without a doubt, and it continues to be a part of my life, and then also try and instill that into my children as well.
So what was it like then when you were in the military? And you did a fair number of years, in the military there. Did it come to take on a new meaning for you?
It did, yeah. Obviously, when you're a young child, you're talking about those of the past, those that have fallen. But when you're actually in the military, it's not those in the past that have fallen, it's those in the present that have fallen. Some of your friends that are no longer with you. So it was no longer more thinking about the history. It was more the history and the present day, which hit home quite hard. And for me as well, as a soldier, I like to be on the battlefield. I don't like to be on the drill square. So for me, it was like I used to dread it each year because I had to ball my boots and get my kit squared away.
Did you ever spend a Remembrance Day on tour?
I did actually, yeah. So I remember being on tour in Afghanistan with the SBS, and I remember actually we flew forward to Camp Bastion, and I was moving one of the vehicles, me and my mate. And I think because of the time difference, it was 11 o'clock in UK, and they had the RMPs stopped us. I think there was a big parade on the square in Camp Bastion, and I was approached by two military police and two females actually, and they said, "Do you know it's Remembrance Day? Do you know the importance of Remembrance Day?" And then I sort of just said to her, I said, "Yes, but the war doesn't stop." But little did she know that actually later on that day at 11 o'clock, it was 11 o'clock Bastion time, 11 o'clock UK time, we dropped the two CH-47s in the desert and the whole squadron had a glass of port. So we did it in our own way. Just because we weren't on the square parading and someone checking my boots in the middle of a war zone, didn't mean that I hadn't forgotten about it and the importance of it. It's just, so it's just two different mindsets.
Do you think that that's something that we need to do more of, though, is accepting that different people have different ways of remembering?
Yeah, exactly. Whether you go to the cenotaph and show your respects that way, or whether you just stay at home, you light a candle, or you just have a little, a tot of whiskey, and it's, again, Remembrance Day is one day. I think obviously we've had friends that we've lost and things like that. It's not just that one day we remember them. We remember them throughout the year. So everyone will have their own little ways of doing it. And we shouldn't judge people just because they haven't, put on their best suit and gone down to the local church. Doesn't mean they haven't forgotten.
Your little lad is definitely going to be remembering. Do you want to tell people about how he's going to be remembering for the rest of his life?
Little Tommy?
Yeah, with his name.
Yeah, he will. So, yeah, Tommy was born on the 1st of July, 2016. And actually, Alana and I, we didn't have a name for a child. I was thinking something, Archie, Reggie, something like a gangster. But because it was the centenary of the Somme, the day that he was born, 100 years, I just thought Tommy was great. The fact that, the soldiers were called Tommies during the Somme, and, some of his relatives also fought in the Somme as well. One of his great uncles. decided to sign up with his brother, but he was underage, but just lied about his age as well. So that's how we named our son after that. So he doesn't know it yet. He's 4 years old. He doesn't really understand the purpose of wearing a poppy, but he soon will be. I think he's a future Royal Marine because he doesn't wear any clothes.
Right. Well, you're over in the States at the moment, and I know you've worked over the States, and you've been out to the States before when you were in the service. What can we learn from the Americans about Remembrance?
Yeah, well, over here, we've just got our daughter's school plan, and they actually have they call it recess. School is shut to celebrate Remembrance Day and Memorial Days here, rather than what we have in UK. They shut the schools completely, and there's a train here which takes the children all the way down to San Diego and to Camp Pendleton to stand alongside some of the serving military and understand a bit more. So rather than just being a history lesson, they're actually stand shoulder to shoulder with people that are serving currently. And I think, there's a lot to be taken from that. Everyone has this perception of the military, it's all about war zones, but actually there's a lot of stuff that we do good in peacetime as well. So it's all about education. So the Americans are very good at that. And we know that obviously the Americans respect their veterans so much. And it's something the UK are picking up on. It was gaining traction, especially during the Iraq and the Afghan wars. But that's 10 years now since, some of them have ceased. And I think we're starting to forget the importance of our veterans as well. So need to reinstall that.
You're an ambassador for the British Legion. How did that come about, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so when I left the military, I got injured. I had a parachuting accident. And again, I always say the military is almost like a business. As soon as you're finished with it, they don't need you anymore. And I didn't get the payout that I had expected from the medical and things like that. So 5 years later, I had a tribunal hearing. And the British Legion helped me during that tribunal hearing. And I reached out to them. We sat down. And I was successful on the tribunal here, which was great. So I obviously got reciprocated for the money that was owed to me, and obviously continued to have a good pension. But I got quite a large lump sum from that. And obviously, about my bike ride, the Pan American Highway. I used £50,000 of that, of the money I'd won from the tribunal here, to set up that campaign. And obviously, later on, when we handed over £900,000 to the mental health charities, British Legion were one of the recipients of that. So it was great circling. In fact, if the Legion hadn't helped me win my case, I probably wouldn't have had the funding to start the PAH campaign, and actually then them being a recipient. So it did a full circle. So it was actually a really nice story. And I'm very pro-British Legion. There are other military charities out there, but I don't think any of them compare to the Legion. It doesn't matter what conflict you fought in. They are there for you, whereas some will only, work with Iraq or Afghan veterans. And I think the Legion do so much that people aren't aware of as well. I think the big one for me is like the Invictus Games, and the fact that everyone sees Help for Heroes and things like that. It's actually the British Legion that fund and help support the families on those things as well. So the Legion is the oldest, and I still think the best.
So we obviously know that there's, it can be a very sad time, Remembrance Sunday, as we remember fallen people. But what are some of your favourite parts of it? Because it's not all doom and gloom, is it?
No, it's remembering. It's also a celebration. I remember, like I said, I used to dread, especially when I was in 5-9 Commando, having to ball my boots, get my number 2s on and polish my medals. You got about a month build up to that of obviously getting inspections and everything else. But then we'd all go to the local British Legion, and it would almost be then a celebration. We'd have a few drinks, but not just with your friends, but with those that served in other units. And it was great for us to hear stories from the past as well. So I think, yes, it's a remembrance, but it's also a celebration of our forces as well, and what they continue to do.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say about Remembrance Day or Remembrance in general?
I think we should obviously just keep remembering why we're doing it and what we're doing it for. Don't be distracted by all these other sort of campaigns as well. Yes, war isn't good, but we need to learn from that, learn from the mistakes of old. And if we don't, our children will be remembering other conflicts.
My name's Corbin Mackin, served with 1st Battalion in the Rifles, and I was on Operation Herrick 9.
When did you come to know about Remembrance Day and Remembrance services?
I started remembering it when I was a kid. Like as I was growing up, my dad was in the Navy. Navy, so we were always going to different parades and that over the years. And it was a real good event every year that I always remembered. And but as a kid, I don't think you really quite understand how much passion there is in a remembrance type of day. You usually go in there because whether it's like an air show or whatever, whether it's just a gathering, and you don't really take it all in that respect. But that's when I started knowing it, is when I was a kid.
And when you joined the military yourself, did your understanding of remembrance begin to change? Yes,
massively. Obviously, before you join, you're watching the documentaries on the military and stuff like that, and a lot of this documentaries were in black and white, because that was one of the main wars that we probably were ingrained in us at school as well. And and you can't really justify like what they had been through until you start to join the military, and then you're starting to do your training, and you're starting to slowly institutionalize to that environment, and then you start to have a special place in your heart about all of the previous wars that have gone on, and how much hurt, how much how many people have lost their lives over the years, and that comes into comparison when you start joining the military.
Did you ever spend a Remembrance Sunday away with the military?
Oh, jeez, let me think. Probably stagging on somewhere in Brecon Beacons, more than likely. Let's think. Yeah, well, yeah. Afghanistan. I was out there in the winter tour, Remembrance Day. So yeah, that was that was one time away, I'd say. But I suppose when you're trying to remember, at the same time, you're probably taking it in about yourself, like being out there in the conflict area. So you kind of remembering your own friends, getting hurt, your own friends, that have been injured in Afghanistan. And then obviously you taking a little bit of that with you. And then Remembrance Day starts to mean a lot more.
Did you have a service, and everything on the Remembrance of a Sunday in Afghanistan?
In what respect?
Did you have did your unit that you were in Afghanistan with, did you have some kind of formal service, or was there a 2-minute silence held or anything like that? Yeah,
it's all silence, isn't it? It's all a silence that we did. I think it was quite hard when you're in a patrol base and stuff like that to properly have done the service. But yeah, it's one of the things that you just, there's so much happened and gone on. I can't really remember like the majority of it, because it was such a big tour for me. So there was obviously bigger impacts in my life that had went on that sticks out, for me personally.
So what does remembrance mean to you now?
Oh, wow. So since Afghanistan, like Remembrance is probably one of the biggest events of my year. And that's just for the fact that, when, my brother Travis, Marine Travis Mackin, died out there when we were serving, it obviously that changed my whole life. And now I feel like Remembrance Day has such a bigger impact on me and my family and my friends, and you start to feel that you like. It's such a bad thing, because Remembrance Day for me also brings up a lot of memories, and it's real hard for me. I get choked up quite a lot. I start getting in the zone when we're having that silence. It's like I'm trying my best to keep it all together, because it's that only one time of the year where I know I have to remember the past, rather than trying to hide it, lock it away, put it in my box. It is that one time where I give something back, a piece of me that deserves the remembrance over there. Because I'll be honest with you, trying to remember it all the time and trying to think of conflicts and that, it really does drag me down, and it really does hurt me. So I try my best to, find a way to release that energy, and that is Remembrance Day. Like that, all that hurt, that anger, that's that one time where I probably get so overwhelmed. Like it's hard for me to speak. So usually when we have a remembrance when we meet for Remembrance, usually I would say a couple of words to friends, family, or whatever. Jesus, it gets me every time. Like, it really does. As soon as I start talking, that's it. It's just, I can't help it. A bunch of overwhelming energy comes through me, and it's like I can't speak. Literally, I'm lost. And that's how much hurt comes with a Remembrance Day for me, and that many memories as well. So they come back to the surface, which isn't very good. But then usually it's accompanied with lots of beer shots. And then that's it, then get a headache.
Is that a side you enjoy about it, though, is like meeting up with all comrades and stuff?
Yeah, do you know what? Feeling a part of the military again, like it's a whole military family, and like respect, it's natural respect. It doesn't matter where you walk, you naturally know who's a veteran, who's not. And yeah, it's one of them, really. I just feel like it's a good event to have, especially for veterans. It's one time that we can actually be a part of a brotherhood again, or surrounded by military people that have experienced similar, events as yourself.
Does it mean a lot to you to see the country remembering people that have fallen, for in service of like this country?
Oh, massively. Like, it doesn't just go for like our tours, but from the actual growth of the wars, like when they first started, and that, let's just go off for World War One, and we go off from there. Like, Jesus, you think of the amount of numbers that died, whether people were serving or not, even the civilians, the lot. It's Remembrance isn't just about, for me, the serving people who lost their lives, but it's, as a collective, the amount of civilians that lost their lives as well, the amount of children, teenagers, whatever, the people that shouldn't have even been at war as well, and lied about their ages just to go away and help, whatever. There's so much, like, well, heroics, and it's mad. Like, if you really do take like that minute silence, which isn't long enough, mind, if you take that and you really think about the amount of people that lost their lives, it can really grab hold of you and give you so much more respect to the people that have actually served for their country.
What do you do? Obviously, this year is different, but generally, what do you do for Remembrance Day?
So every year we go to a place called Stonehouse Barracks. It's a Royal Marines barracks, and it overlooks the sea, and it overlooks Drake's Island. So many people should know HMS Drake or Drake's Island itself. And it's just enclosed away from everything. You're just there with the people that count for like our own little service for Travis, like trying to remember Trav, like, his life and all that sort of stuff. At the same time, obviously, we are also remembering everyone that has lost their lives, family members that are obviously grieving still to this day. And that becomes like such a big event for us. And it's become like a huge event. Like every year it's the same amount of people, and it's a nice little service for Trav, like where everyone can come together and just give their one day just to remember him and his life.
You're a father. How do you talk to your kids about Remembrance?
Jeez, well, I'm a father now, but I tell you what, I'm already starting to remember lots of stories. And one day, my little ninja River, bless her heart, she's going to know them all when I have the courage to say it. But she's only, 17 months old at the minute, so it's quite hard to even go down that subject. But she always points at a picture in my kitchen and looks up and points, and then she looks at me because we look quite similar. I'm wondering if she's thinking it's me. But one day I will tell her that picture is her older uncle Travis. So, it's such a shame she'll never get to see or meet him, which is quite sad, really. It's something I try not to think about too much because it'll get me upset because, he would have been such a great uncle to her,
Is there anything else that you'd like to say about Remembrance or Remembrance Day specifically?
No, like just specifically this year with COVID-19 going on, I think we have to really make sure that our culture, our Remembrance Day isn't forgotten about, even with COVID-19 going on, because at the end of the day, COVID-19 is something we cannot help and stop, but Remembrance Day, everyone can give that minute to silence still, wherever you are, If it's in the street, you're in your car, pull over, anything like that, and just give that little bit of time that you can offer, which is for free, just to remember all those people from all the conflicts that have lost their lives. And not just that, to the day, family, friends, oppos or whatever, are still struggling. And so many people are trying their best to get through life as any way they can, and they will keep their barrier up, their smiling faces. And I'll put it out there that COVID-19 is having a massive effect on lots of veterans out there that are struggling. And the last thing I like seeing is, veterans, taking their own lives when they have nowhere else to turn. And COVID-19 stops you and the veterans from seeking help. It makes you more depressed because you can't get out. You can't go and see that one person that you could have went and spoken to because of the different lockdown situations in different areas of the country. So reach out and give, even if it's that 1 minute that you can't give to Remembrance, give that 1 minute to that person that's struggling, or that one person that's feeling a bit down and it deep down, or just that question. There's always something we can give back, whether or not it's the minute to Remembrance or a minute to someone you think struggling. And I think that will go a long way.
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow we gave our today.